Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 13th, 2026 East Lansing Planning Commission meeting. Mr. Bartley, could you please take roll?
Yes, Commissioner Chapin.
Here.
Commissioner Denault.
Here.
Commissioner Greening. Commissioner Lapine-Ray. Commissioner Overby.
Here.
Commissioner Putz.
Here.
Commissioner Ramirez-Roberts.
Here.
Vice Chair Wagner.
Here.
Chair Sullivan.
Here.
And we have quorum.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Denault, seconded by Commissioner Overby. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Agenda approved. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes from the April 22nd, 2026 Planning Commission meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Wagner, seconded by Commissioner Putz. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Minutes approved. Takes us on to item number 2, committee reports, and item number 3, staff reports. Mr. Bartley?
Thank you. We haven't had any committee meetings since your last meeting on April 22nd. The Age-Friendly Communities Committee will be meeting tomorrow morning to a quarterly meeting to essentially check in on implementation of the age-friendly work plan that was adopted last year. We're also setting up a staff work group about data centers. Commissioner Putz will be representing the Planning Commission on that, and we expect that to start in the next couple weeks. I'll talk about that more in item 8.1 tonight. As far as staff reports, you'll see in your packet that I included 3 council manager reports. Council manager reports are produced by staff at the end of each week and sent to the manager's office, essentially just summing up what we've been working on, and then the manager sends that to council. And last week, the manager said, we would love to have you start sharing that with your boards and commissions. So I've included the most recent 3 reports, and we'll start doing that. And I think that would basically be a big staff report for you. So if you want to see what staff's working on, that's a good start. Last night, council met and appointed your newest planning commissioner, Dr. Lorna Greening. Unfortunately, she's sick and couldn't make it tonight. She was bummed, but she'll be hoping to join you at your next meeting, which will be on May 27th. The commission council also introduced and referred 2 ordinances your direction. Ordinance 1575 will be recommendations from the Green Code Committee, and Ordinance 1576 will close a loophole that is a loophole around the diverse housing requirement. So we'll have both of those for you probably in your June meeting. They approved a site plan request at 601 Abbott here at Abbott and Fern to convert that building, St. James Place, into 9 apartments. So that is approved. Let's see. And also, I gave a brief report on Ordinance 1559, which is the diverse housing ordinance that this commission recommended approval for last time with several modifications. We discussed that briefly, and the council scheduled a public hearing for June 16th for their public hearing for that ordinance. Finally, myself and the other planners in our department went to the American Planning Association's National Conference last month in Detroit, April 24th to 28th, I think. Great conference. It was really good. I really appreciated that also Commissioner Denault was able to join us. And I just wanted to see if the Commissioner had any comments about the conference, how it went for you.
Sure. Thank you, Landon. I think, first of all, really grateful to have the opportunity to attend the conference. And I saw some really wonderful presentations on encouraging small-scale development from within neighborhoods, which I thought was really relevant to a lot of the conversations we have, especially small-scale housing development. And got to go on a handful of tours in Detroit to look at some art projects and the new riverfront park. And it was a wonderful time, and got to spend time with staff, and it was great. And again, just so grateful for the opportunity to go. So thank you to staff and thank you to the city.
We'll try to keep providing those opportunities as they come up,
Thanks for representing us.
subject to funding. That's my staff report, Mr. Chair.
So I have a question.
Commissioner Chapin, please.
Yeah, okay. So since this board packet has so much about student housing, rental, downtown, development out in the neighborhoods, I picked up on it. First of all, I love those reports from City Manager Bellman. And I read them. The May 8th report, there's a comment, Landon met with MSU campus planner collaborating, love that word, on a project that will identify priority locations for improvements. So given all that we have in our packet tonight, we've never really talked about this directly. I wonder if there was conversation about student dorms. We just haven't talked about it. I'm assuming that the developers have vetted that and there are no plans for student dorms, but given the fact that we're talking about some big topics tonight, I had to that just jumped out at me. So is there conversation about building student dorms? I don't believe there is, so I'd just like to get it out on record tonight in advance of a conversation like we're going to have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
As far as I'm aware, no.
Okay.
I check in with the planner, meet with them typically quarterly or more often, and that's always a topic of conversation is what are your plans, what are my plans? And I'm not aware of any plans of MSU to build housing.
So in other words, I would make a pointed remark about this and student tuition and the cost of a college education, but I'll choose not to make that comment. It's the burden, maybe not the burden, but the responsibility lies with the City of East Lansing and good developers and good ordinance work here in the City of East Lansing. So that helps me set the table for some conversation that's going to occur later tonight. Fair enough?
Yep.
Okay,
Good question.
all right.
And on that, Landon, I guess is the trend that you're aware of across campuses nationwide, is it more of dorm development or is it more just apartment development, different type of housing development? I guess there's multiple ways to house students, especially with, sophomore, junior, senior level students. Was any of additional housing in general discussed on campus, not just dormitory housing?
Yeah, it's hard to give a sense of national trends. I'd like to find out more about that and let you know. As far as MSU goes, we did talk about what are the future plans. Would it be more dormitory housing if housing is constructed? It seems to be that the trend is moving somewhat away from that and more towards more like you'd see at privately owned apartment buildings, including university-developed apartment buildings that are constructed outside of the university campus. But again, my understanding from MSU is that they don't have any plans either way on constructing new housing right now.
Okay, fair enough.
There was some discussion, I should say, on a potential sort of development that would be near the stadium that I think is contemplated. I'm not sure if anything's been, officially proposed. Some developers I know pitched some proposals to the board, but I haven't seen those beyond some renderings that were in the Lansing State Journal. My understanding was that there may be some housing that would be included in that, but it wouldn't be designed for students. It might be for alumni. Again, though, it's pretty conceptual. I haven't seen any plans, and the campus planner didn't have any information he could share with me.
Got it. Thank you.
Fair enough. Good.
Any additional comments or questions for Ramirez Roberts?
Just a quick thing. I read through a few months back now, like the 20-year plan that MSU has for development, and there's no, large-scale dorms or student housing anywhere that they're really looking at. All they're looking at in that plan is specifically like mixed-use stuff with maybe some scattered housing throughout. So, good.
Interesting. Thank you.
And just, if I can make one last point on that, generally that campus plan is sort of an exercise in what could be built according to the sort of internal zoning. So there are several renderings shown in that plan that show a new south campus, for example, and that isn't necessarily proposed, but they're just sort of exploring what could buildings look like in the current development framework on campus in the future. So just be careful when you look at that plan that it's not necessarily saying this is what we're going to do. It's more saying this is what we could do.
Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other comments or questions, it takes us on to item number 4, Commissioner announcements. This is also your time to disclose any conflicts of interest on items on tonight's agenda. So are there any announcements or conflicts of interest disclosure from commissioners? All right, moving right along. Up next is communications from citizens. Written communications, item 5.1. I did see quite a bit of written correspondence for item 6.1 and 6.2 in the agenda. I don't think there's anything outside of those two items, right?
No, just to note that we received several emails or letters since the packet was first published last Friday. And we generally don't republish the packet until Wednesday, or typically the afternoon. So several of those letters would have shown up to the public this afternoon. We had a couple questions saying, hey, where's my letter? So just to sort of clarify, it comes, it just doesn't, we only republish once, generally.
Yep. Noted, thank you. Up next
So
is
I'm sorry, so Landon, they are in the current packet now?
Yes.
Online,
And
yeah.
online,
Okay.
all the letters that we received, as far as I know.
Thank you.
Okay. Up next is verbal from the audience, item 5.2. This is your time to come forward and address the Planning Commission on any item on or off tonight's agenda. We please ask that you keep your comments limited to 5 minutes. Identify yourself on a card up there if you have yet to do so, and if you are here tonight to speak on one of tonight's public hearings, which are items 6.1 and 6.2, the overlay district item, and then the Grand River development proposal. We do ask that you speak during those agenda items, but now's your time. So would anybody like to come forward and address the Planning Commission? Okay. Is there anyone online in the queue?
Yes, we have two. Caller with a phone number ending in 233. You're now online to address the commission. You may need to unmute. Moving on to the other one. Caller ending in 713. You're now allowed to address the commission. You may need to unmute your phone.
Can you hear me? I have unmuted my phone.
We can hear you.
Okay, good afternoon, Commission. My name is Jacqueline Genovese. I am an owner of the property located at 353 Division Street in East Lansing. And this is regarding item 6.2, the Ordinance 1572. So what I would like to do is address that the current ordinance, as I am reading it, does not specifically eliminate those overlay districts. It simply creates for us homeowners a fair and reasonable process for us to request consideration when the unique circumstances that exist that are laid out in that ordinance. This current ordinance that is in place effectively traps homeowners like me and my neighbor because there's really no mechanism that we can use for removal. Even when, I believe in this case, the original neighborhood conditions no longer exist. When the overlay was put in place 20 years ago, it was there for a purpose, and that purpose is no longer in that specific neighborhood where I reside on 353 Division Street. In fact, I view my home as an isolated island in a sea of rentals, meaning that overlay is not really preserving the type of neighborhood it was originally intended to protect. When we purchased the home, we understood the overlay, but the longer we have been in there, we realized that our neighborhood isn't the type that the overlay was meant to protect. We are surrounded by rentals. And East Lansing, where my son is a student, continues to face housing demand from responsibly managed, licensed rental homes. And a way to provide safe and stable housing without really changing the character of the entire neighborhood. So what I propose is that the ordinance 1572 move forward for further consideration. I still feel the ordinance protects public input because every request would require the public hearings, the planning commission review, and city council approval. But it's written very narrowly so that if you as a homeowner meet those three requirements to have an overlay removed, then you should be able to have it removed. Again, I don't believe the original overlay really protects what the original intent was, and it's really restricting me from my ability to retain value in my home as a single-family home owner occupied, and limits my ability to what I may want to do with my property in the future. And that's it. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Is anyone else online in the queue? Just the two, right?
Just the two, but the first one, the person who was just talking was the first one. She must have unmuted before I moved on. So
Okay.
can I check with
Please.
the other one?
Yep.
Thank you. Caller ending in 713. You're now free to address the commission. Okay, I think we're good.
All right, thank you. That takes us on to tonight's public hearings. First is item 6.1, a public hearing to receive comments and a request from Evan Williams on behalf of Harbor Bay Ventures for approval of a site plan for a 12-story mixed-use development consisting of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom dwelling units in a ground floor commercial space at 401, 421, and 427 East Grand River Avenue. Ms. Wrighton?
Good evening. This project was before you several months ago in a different form. The applicant has resubmitted for a 12-story mixed-use building utilizing mass timber for an additional 2 stories and lead gold for additional 2 stories. In the B3 district, buildings are permitted up to 8 stories by right with a principal use on the first floor. The additional stories permitted by the incentives from the ordinance that was previously provided gets them to the 12 stories that they're proposing. The building does consist of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom multifamily units with commercial areas on the first floor. This project does not include parking. They have 2 restaurants on the first floor, as well as their bike parking and amenity spaces, mechanical and loading and so forth. It's a 0.7 acre parcel, which currently houses the student bookstore, former Starbucks, and a former restaurant. It is approximately 316,683 square feet building, 139 feet and 9 inches tall. They're utilizing the entire site with 0 setbacks by using a bonus allotment, which is in section 50-593 for development standards, where the site itself, building-wise, can only be 80% and ground coverage can be 85%. But if you offer a qualifying feature, which they are providing outdoor dining, you can get up to the 100%. One note for this is if the outdoor dining were to change at any point, they would have to provide a qualifying feature of no less than 445.3 square feet to allow the building coverage of 100% and no less than 750 square feet to allow the 100% lot coverage should the outdoor dining be eliminated. The building does include 296 efficiency 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units with a total occupancy of 748 spaces. They do provide an alternate plan, but 4-bedroom units are not permitted by right or by special use in the district. The next floor plan, this is a layout on the screen that shows a general layout of the second floor, which also provides amenity spaces, and then the 3rd through 12th stories, generally the mix of bedrooms. The main entrance is proposed off of Charles Street. There is an elevator that's provided, but it's not defined whether it's a freight elevator or not. Back to the second floor, I'm sorry about that. Their amenity deck, there's no access shown to the terrace, and there is no detail related to the railing, because it is quite high. That will need to be determined. The applicant is providing 348 bike spaces. There are some deficiencies in the plan requirements, such as the lighting fixtures and heights. They'll have to provide those. The landscaping, they're deficient on the Charles Street side by 1, but they do have enough proposed on East Grand River. The environmentalist and our arborist request that they consider multiple species of trees rather than just one, as they've got now. Yeah, so they're showing 3 on Charles. The other concern is the intersection at Charles Street and East Grand River, that there's a sightline distance that's required for tree setbacks. They do have wall signage depicted, which will require its own permit after approval. They are providing a stormwater detention basin. It is not required based on the threshold, subject to city requirements, which a minimum trigger is 1 acre, but they're listing that there'll be a detention or holding area for runoff mitigation, but they have not provided calculations to what amount that would be in the holding area. They'll need to do a soil erosion plan. Other departments had comments with concerns related to the alleyway and the loading dock being perpendicular. The alley is only 16 feet wide, so a perpendicular access might be a challenge. The building department was concerned about a life safety plan, egress and distances for travel for all floors, turning radius options for the fire department. They do provide restaurants on the first floor, so there's concerns for showing that the mechanical hood vent discharge is provided. Fire department echoed those comments. Public Works had provided comments that consider the plan submitted as preliminary. They are asking for information related to the sidewalks, referencing sheets that are not included, valve sizes, leads, ADA compliance, limits of demolition and installation on roadways, sidewalks, curbs, and so forth. And there is concern related to the construction schedule, how the alley and the 2 main streets will be utilized and secured. Parking department has indicated that they would request temporary metered loading zone spaces along the building on Charles Street, because this property is not providing any on-site parking, which is prohibited, but the previous comments from the parking department still echo that there are only 215 available spaces in the parking system to be rented on a monthly basis for all downtown development. That is what the parking department has indicated that they are comfortable providing. The applicant has provided some details related to the ratios that they determine that they'll need for parking, which they are here to speak to. This application is a site plan approval, and as part of site plan, site plan approval is required to minimize adverse impacts on surrounding properties, public streets, and public services, and to protect the public health, safety, and welfare, general welfare. And there are specific elements within a site plan that are missing from this packet. There are a list included in your packet. It goes from the details related to what's required in general on a site plan. I've already mentioned the trees, I've already mentioned the light fixtures. Their narrative needs to further identify how a 12-story building is consistent with the neighborhood. There are several buildings 3 and 4 blocks away that are similar in height, but the immediately surrounding area doesn't have the same scale. There is also a requirement in this text which requires that non-residential uses provide the period of a lease and the approximate range of sale and prices and rentals of the proposed dwelling units. Land use statistics reflected in the plan against the required conditions, meaning what the ordinance allows and what they're providing. And has not been provided a proposed construction schedule and staging of the development, which is required. So some further elements related to the height requirements. They're not providing any specific yard areas, which aren't required because they can utilize the setbacks, but to keep in mind, if that outdoor dining that's provided were to go away and this were approved, they would have to have a plan in place to maintain the amount of square feet of a qualifying feature. There are concerns for the natural features, and with 0 setbacks, no additional natural features. There may be some planters that are in the drawings based on some of the renderings. And they do indicate in their narrative that there's landscape courtyards, tree-lined pedestrian paths, and programmed open spaces, but they weren't clearly defined in the plans. Furthermore, with the traffic, there is concern related to the emergency vehicles access and turning radiuses. Questions whether or not the building will be sprinkled, calculations related to stormwater, which is not required, but they're providing it, so they should provide the information related to those numbers. And then some of the further comments are repetitive, just different sections of the ordinance hit the same things in different times. Couple of side notes, and the applicant is aware of these comments, they were provided them. There are 3 lots, and the property would need to be combined should this project be approved. They're aware of what that process is. There's some inconsistencies with the legal descriptions. And I think the rest of this I've already addressed. So if there's any questions specifically for me before the applicant were to give their presentation.
Vice Chair.
Thanks for that overview, Alicia. It's great to hear it. I have a question about, excuse me, qualifying features. So I understand, an outdoor restaurant qualifies, which would be great. We don't have very many of those in East Lansing, probably primarily because for half the year we can't eat outside, it's too cold. So if you had a qualifying feature like a restaurant and it was 50 degrees below zero, I mean, would they have to have it open all year round, or is it seasonal? And
No, they just couldn't abandon it, so it would be expected that it would be seasonal. But
Okay.
if the restaurants or the outdoor dining were proposed to go away, the qualifying features under the bonus allotments include items such as atriums, arcades, enclosed walkways, rooftop gardens, landscaped areas, plazas, and so forth. So they would just have to maintain a certain amount of the square footage that I previously mentioned.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Couple of comments,
Commissioner Overby.
if I may, please. I'm concerned about the parking issue. I understand that there's some number of parking spaces from the city. I'm a member of the Bailey Community Association, and on our association are 2 members that live on Division Street, which is right near the hub. And parking from the hub floods into the neighborhood. And they park in the streets, they park in the businesses, and they sometimes block the private homes, and it's parking is a very difficult problem in that neighborhood. And the hub has no on-set parking, and nor does this particular development. And I live 5 blocks from this development, which could flood into the neighborhood in my area. So I'm expressing a general concern about the whole issue of parking.
If I may,
Please.
parking is prohibited in the district unless they provide it with a demonstrated need, which they're not required to do. The 215 spaces for monthly rental based on the parking department's determination that that's what they'd be comfortable using doesn't mean that there aren't additional spaces that could be purchased potentially individually. The way that the ordinance is designed is to try and encourage less cars, more
I
bikes
understand
at the transit. We had talked with MSU previously about the commuter lot, but that is not an option. Students may apply on their own potentially, but there's not going to be an opportunity for an agreement there. But because the ordinance prohibits it strictly.
Right. Well, and there's a ratio that's used to determine how many beds, how many cars per this number of beds, and I admit to a great deal of skepticism about that ratio. I see the traffic in East Lansing firsthand. My other comment has to do with the structure and just the size of it, and there's a requirement that it reasonably be compatible with the surrounding properties. And I saw nothing that addressed how this development achieved that compatibility. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Denault?
I just had 2 questions. One was building off of Commissioner Wagner's comments about the bonus space, or the bonus building coverage that they get by having the certain amenities. Do those amenities have to be publicly accessible or accessible only to residents? Is there a sort of like divide between the two? Or do all spaces like that count no matter who has access to them?
The ordinance specifically says for buildings and sites where the principal use is a combination of any commercial use identified in section 50-592 and housing, bonus coverage shall be allocated on the basis of 5 square feet of added building and ground coverage for every 1 square foot of site area occupied by qualifying features. And that bonus allotment may be granted provided that the proposed use, its site, or its relationship to adjacent properties incorporates certain architectural or site design features which allow for public or private open space, free movement of pedestrian traffic, abundant light and air, interior community space, and other related elements.
Okay, so public or private. Okay. And then my second question, I saw that the police did not have time to share their comments on the proposal before you wrote your report. Have they since had time to share any comments? No?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
That's
Vice
an
Chair?
interesting point, though, because if they were to have, so it rules out some of the qualifying features unless they want to have a rooftop guard with public access so people could go and use the elevators and go up.
Yeah, and I think that's what not to have crosstalk at this point, because that's not what this time is for, but my question, I think I was interested in, are these extra bonus amenities being provided to us, the public, or are they just for residents? And it's hard for me to sort of balance both of those equally.
Okay, I have a series of questions I'm going to get to. So, Alicia, you mentioned stormwater and that you were still, I think, doing your analysis of what the overall impacts would be there. Would you characterize it as a net positive, or?
I'll have to have the applicant speak to that. They didn't
Okay.
provide any stormwater calculations, and their plan just indicates a rectangle with stormwater detention and holding.
A lot of these, I think I'm going to be double dipping with the applicant, but humor me for a second. On the engineering comments on page 14, look like there was a series of comments that, are those in progress? Are you working with the applicant on rectifying those issues? I think the alleyway In particular, now let me pull up page 14.
So there is material in your application packet that arrived the day before I was to complete my report. I have not reviewed it. Some of that information may be in there. I did also receive an updated list of comment responses from Evan yesterday, which were added to your packet. Again, did not have time to review that.
Okay. Well, I'll review those in between meetings, but it looked like it was a handful of issues regarding the alley, safety plan, layout of the 3-bedroom units, mechanical hood vent, and turning radius for fire department. So all those are included.
That's a combination of engineering and building.
Okay. Parking, I spent a lot of time reading about parking ratios and what cities utilize and the formulas there. I thought that was pretty insightful. I hadn't seen it characterized in that way. Did the parking ratio change significantly with the reduction of the size and mass of the building?
No,
No?
they went down by 160 some beds, I think. So that's not a significant change when you're at 0.2 or 0.3.
Just point to, so 160 bed reduction doesn't reduce, and they're
Well, it
still
does.
asking for essentially the same amount of spaces from the city, so the ratio would have improved at least somewhat, right?
There's, yeah, go ahead.
The code requires and allows 0 spaces.
Yeah, I know, so
So
that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking
Okay.
about the number of spaces that they plan to lease for the city that aren't on the on-site development, so.
So the way that they calculate their spaces, they can provide the data more detailed related to, it's either 0.2, 0.3 is the general amount. The previous development, they hadn't actually stated how much that they wanted from the city. They just indicated that they thought there would be enough, as was provided with the development availability for shared in the department. But they're, I believe, asking for a little bit more this time. But it will ultimately depend on what gets approved and what developments are occurring, because there are, and that 215 is for all developments. It doesn't matter if it's this one, the other one, a new one comes online downtown. That was what the parking department was willing to say it could be monthly rented. But again, individual students may be able to obtain their own parking passes through the city directly.
And then lastly, for you, I do have more questions for the applicant, but we'll let them go before that. For the sidewalk and safety of the patio, so it looks like the building there is inset and they have sort of garage-style doors that open up, so the restaurant is sort of inside, outside. Are they required per ordinance to have, I don't know, a fence or screening for the patio that blocks the pedestrians from the restaurant patio?
There's a building code requirement and a food requirement, I believe, if they serve alcohol, which that hasn't been discussed at this point, but if there were alcohol, you would see it again as a special use, and that would require fencing barriers, which is state requirements.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Oh, I did have one.
Commissioner Denault?
I saw that in some of the proposed drawings, they are, or renderings, they're asking for a series of 4-bedroom units, which are not permitted.
Correct.
And so we are only reviewing right now a site plan. They would need a variance. So we are we approving a site plan with 3-bedroom units right now only? Should we ignore the 4-bedroom units until we see
Yes.
a request for variance?
Yeah, they have not submitted
Okay.
a request for variance. Their project is for 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units.
Okay.
They indicate that 4 bedrooms would be preferred, and there's a narrative that they've provided with their argument as to why, but they are prohibited by
Yes.
ordinance. To my knowledge, they don't intend to apply for a variance, but they're here so they can
Okay.
answer that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, at this point, we are ready for the applicant. So Evan Williams and Mark Bell.
Which presentation do you want, the parking one or your big one?
No presentation. I'm just going to use some boards and keep it casual.
Do you want this up?
Sure, you can leave that up. Thank you. I thought I'd go a little bit more casual tonight. I know I've been up there a couple of times, and so I actually hate PowerPoints personally. It's a pet peeve of mine. So you have some great PowerPoint presentations in your packets that you can certainly read, but you don't need me to read a PowerPoint to you. I think that's, well, it's a... Oh, I'm sorry. Mark Bell, CEO, Harbor Bay. So within those packets, pretty comprehensive on the project itself. It goes over what we've presented thus far, some of the consultants that have come. You've heard from structural engineers, you've heard from sustainability engineers, you've heard from architects talking about things like sustainability, mass timber, so on and so forth. We also have a PowerPoint presentation on parking. We can talk about parking tonight, would love to. So what I'd like to do is just try to keep this free form. We put some boards together to create some thoughts, spearhead some questions, some dialogue. Maybe I'll stop kind of here and there to see if there's any questions or comments. But I think from my standpoint tonight, what I wanted to try to do is articulate what this project means to me personally, and really to the Ballheim family, right? So for me personally, there's two main fundamental principles that I think embody this project. One, first and foremost, is the Howard Ballheim. I think some of us in this room have had the fortune to know and meet Howard back in the day. Obviously, Greg and Brad are here in the audience. Howard being the patriarch of the family, I think that the goal of this project has always been to extend that legacy of the bookstore that originated plus or minus 65 years ago. So I'd be remiss if I didn't say that as kind of the one founding principle. The second founding principle that I like to spend quite a bit of time within reason is talking about mass timber. And I know that we've talked about mass timber a lot, right? And I think from my standpoint, we've heard from engineers, we've heard from sustainability folks. I know that many of you, I think, have spent plus or minus 18 months on Ordinance 1536, environmental sustainability mass timber. What I'd like to do tonight is talk to you about the practical nature from a developer of mass timber. So what I mean by that is when we look at this development, oftentimes developers can be guilty of what I would call hyperbolic rhetoric, right? A lot of cliches, a lot of words like transformational and different things like that. But when we look at this project and we take the two variables of mass timber, tall mass timber, so 8 stories or higher, right, Resi, gold LEED certification. When we take those two variables and we intersect them and we look at the data set, there are 2 buildings in the entire United States that qualify under that circumstance. There's one in Portland, Oregon, and there's one in Cleveland, Ohio. We developed the second one. So the point that I'm trying to make is that we're at the doorstep of dramatic innovation. Innovation that's evolving as we speak. As an example, when we developed Intro Cleveland back in 2020, there was not a single domestic American manufacturer that bid that job, mass timber. It was about a 500,000 square foot building. America has generally been very slow to adopt mass timber. Europe, Canada, even Japan have been decades ahead of us. For me personally, I looked at mass timber, and there's a great developer, international developer called Hines that develops mass timber office buildings called T3. I walked the first T3 building in Minneapolis, and I've been schooled in real estate for a long time. It's always been taught as a commodity, and that building spoke to me differently than any building I've ever walked in my life, right? So that really changed the trajectory of Harbor Bay. We became impassioned to develop mass timber as relates to residential. This is back in 2018, forging forward to Cleveland in 2020. At that time, the IBC code, the International Building Code, was way behind where it is today. Okay, so we had to get what's called an alternative engineer method. We worked with the governor of Ohio. We worked with the mayor of Cleveland. Everyone came together and we built that building, right? Today, fast forward, and Michigan is one of 22 states that have adopted the 2021 Tall Mass Timber Code. What does that mean? It means, to me, it's actually, I look at the inverse, there's 28 states in the country right now that don't have mass timber in its code, which is wild, right? So there's only 22 states that can actually do that project by code, and Michigan is one of them. When I look at Michigan, I look at American timber production, we just broke ground about 7 months ago on a very similar project in Columbus, Ohio. In fact, timber just showed up last week. We're on site. We'd love anybody who wants to come down to Columbus to see the project. Timber's going up. Big deal. This isn't political to me, but there's obviously a lot of movement going on right now as far as onshoring, manufacturing different things. Cleveland, I should note, we got the wood from Austria, a company called Binderholz, great company, great people. But as we move into mass timber, and again, the kind of overarching thesis of this particular project, and we look at domestic production, and we look at Michigan, okay? So Michigan, for example, in forestry services, has $27 billion per year in annual GDP as it relates to the forest industries, right? So it could be paper mills, sawmills, logging, 27 billion. Very rich history in wood, particularly in the UP, right? So when we look at mass timber, I actually really compliment the commission and council and stakeholders in 1536, because as I understood it, and I researched this extensively, I had my team research it, and we are mass timber enthusiasts, as you can tell. East Lansing, I think, is the only city in the entire country that has a mass timber incentivized ordinance within its zoning. So I think looking at this building and saying, what does it really mean, right? It's saying, again, that intersection of gold LEED certification, we should talk about that because gold is extremely hard to achieve in residential. And in fact, as we go back, when we looked at this building, our first iteration, our second iteration, town hall meetings, what does it want to be? What we didn't want to do is overpromise and underdeliver. Very easy to say, okay, let's do a mass timber gold LEED certification building. But again, there's only 2 of these buildings in the entire country, right? Gold LEED certification in general, by the way, is constantly being iterated, scorecards, different things, pre-certification, and we need to be cognizant of that. So again, for me, looking at this deal, it's about leadership. I think Michigan's got a great opportunity to lead here. I do think that in 10 years from now, I won't be at a podium saying that there's only 2 of these buildings in the country. There's going to be probably a lot more. We're seeing this a lot in the public sector, whether, take for instance Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor, I think, has about 4 or 5 elementary schools going on right now as mass timber. There's museums, there's libraries, there's offices. But in order for mass timber to really get mainstream, it has to be into buildings like this. Why? Because when we get into buildings like this, it actually, in my mind, believe it or not, solves affordability. We all want affordable housing, but I'm a big believer personally of non-governmental affordable housing. And so we study construction extensively. We love it. I was just there on site in Columbus. Mass timber, you can build that building, okay, with a fraction of the labor as compared to steel and concrete. So if I'm building that building out of PT construction, post-tension concrete, usually 30 to 40 carpenter crews, laborers have to turn that floor in order to do PT construction. Alternatively, if you want to do cold form metal stud construction, which is the Landmark, which is the Abbott, which is the Graduate, same thing, ton of labor. So in the crisis of affordability, with costs going up, labor going up, commodities going up, the inflation report just, the federal inflation report just went yesterday, not good. We've seen post-COVID costs go up by 40%. Utilities go up by 50%. Insurance, which is horrible in mass timber, we can talk about that if you want, up 100%, right? So we have to hit affordability at a lot of different levels. And from a enthusiast of non-governmental affordability, it's how do we build faster, cheaper, with the labor market, meanwhile, that is being eroded as the years go by, right? Not many people are getting into the trades. It's still a big problem. I think it's actually bottomed out and coming up, but we've battled this problem for about 10 years now. So speaking about the trades, just a little update on where we are on the project. We're at 100% schematic design on that project. We're out to all the divisions of construction bidding out right now. 50 to 60 subcontractors. We're talking about mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, concrete, wood, carpenter, so on and so forth. State of Michigan, I love the mass timber aspect. I want to talk about student housing real quickly, actually. So student housing, I think there's a lot of talk about student housing. And, okay, are students going to live in that building? Yes, they are. But it's not regulated to students. What I believe in mass timber is that these are such innovative buildings. They're very diverse. I think everyone knows, right, that when we walk into a mass timber unit, the living room and the bedroom are exposed. So when that floor panel comes down, that is your finished ceiling. There's no drywall in the ceiling. So when we bring into a concept like biophilia, which is taking outdoor elements into an interior building, that is a desired place to live. A building that does not exist in the entire state of Michigan right now. So you build that building, and I would submit to you, similar to what we're seeing in Columbus, is that yes, there are going to be students that live in the building, juniors and seniors, right, because there's freshmen and sophomore have to live on campus in Michigan State. But we see Ann Arbor, Madison, Austin, Raleigh, these towns that are taking the graduates, and the graduates are choosing to live in that same town where they went to school. They would prefer it. I mean, people are not moving to Chicago as much as they did, or New York City. So I would submit that there's going to be plenty of non-students that can live in that building and enjoy that building. The average age, if I'm reading the comprehensive report, is 21 years of age in East Lansing. I'm assuming that takes into account Michigan State, obviously. But I think that demographic is that building, right? That's a beautiful building that will be great in every sense of the word. I'm very passionate about it. So I was going to transition to parking, but maybe I can stop there and field any questions you might have from a technical standpoint, or mass timber, or domestic production, or where the wood's coming from, Michigan, any of those things that you want to talk about. We should talk about the cost, too, of mass timber and LEED certification.
Any questions before we pivot to parking?
I mean,
Commissioner Denault?
I wasn't interested in where it was coming from, and now I'm like, where is it coming from?
Yes, awesome. Okay, so it used to come from, we got it from Austria during COVID, across the sea, into the St. Lawrence Seaway, down into Cleveland, and we did the Port of Cleveland, which was a big economic development, hoorah-rah type of thing, which was awesome. And it all worked out in the end during COVID. Since then, the Americans have started to ramp up this innovative construction means and methods. There's a company called Smartlam out of Alabama and in Montana, so you can use a different species of wood. So believe it or not, southeast United States, southern yellow pine is great for mass timber. They harvest it very responsibly. Basically, for every tree they cut down, they plant 3 trees. I think everyone knows, real quickly, global warming, right? I mean, I think everyone realizes there's global warming. Maybe the debate is how much global warming, how severe it is. But you can only stop a global warming one of 2 ways. You emit less carbon, right, or you take carbon out of the air. Second-grade photosynthesis. You plant the trees, they suck it down. Basically, a tree maximizes its sequestration of carbon in its teenage years. So we want to cut down trees in their teenage years, not old growth trees, and replant them, cut them down again, 15, 20-year age of trees to stop the carbon emissions. The other really cool thing, now that I'm on the carbon emissions thing, is that most people talk about operational carbon. So we talk about LED bulbs, we talk about solar panels. No one talks about embodied carbon. Embodied carbon is the carbon that is produced during the construction process. 40% of all greenhouse gases come from the construction industry. So that's another reason why we need to be responsible and be looking at renewable resources to build mid to high-rise buildings, not out of steel and concrete. There's always going to be concrete. That's the other kind of funny thing, is that are we competing against concrete? We have great concrete subs that we love. The answer is they have to work together. Our podium is concrete, our stair towers is concrete, our elevator towers are concrete, and honestly, the carpenters from the concrete are a great symbiotic relationship to oftentimes erect the timber. So so yes, the wood from Columbus is coming from Alabama. This would also likely come from Alabama. And I think on Michigan, which is interesting, and I talked at the Michigan Tall Mass Timber Conference, I don't know, 6 months ago. Sandra Lupian was there in Kalamazoo. I think that's the next kind of moment for Michigan, is they have the sawmills. Do they want to invest in manufacturing facilities for CLT, cross-laminated timber, and glulam columns and beams? I think the answer is yes. There's a company called Element 5, which is just in Toronto. So it's right there for the taking. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the noise of construction with mass timber? I think we'd heard previously it was reduced because you're not cutting on site.
Yeah.
Could you speak to that?
For sure. Great question. Yes. Noise, speed of construction, all are vastly superior for mass timber. Basically, what we do is we have to get our design completely done. A lot of times, if you're in a steel and concrete building, what I would like to say, you can kind of chase design through construction. In mass timber, you have to get your whole design done. Why? Because your BIM model, okay, so all your MEP and FP penetrations go into a model. That model goes to the manufacturer down in Alabama. They then create and manufacture the wood. The wood then goes into a CNC machinery with a 5-axis machine that actually drills all those holes so that when it comes to the site on flatbeds, it's erected with the tower crane, and it's basically a kit of parts like a Lego set. So again, the speed of construction is probably improved by maybe 30%, and there's no, when you do concrete, you're drilling, you're hammering, it's none of that because all of your penetrations are done. When we talk about, again, the affordability on penetrations, for every dollar that a developer or construction spends, 66 cents plus or minus is labor, 33 cents is materials. So when we talk about affordability, again, there's LIHTC and there's lots of ways we can solve for affordability, right? But the private sector needs to innovate. And so how do we build faster? How do we be more predictable? So most of our conversations, when we talk to these 50 to 60 subs, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, we say, I can improve your man hours, which means they could be more profitable, get on to the next job. We have to study this, and Michigan State is one of, I think, of only 4 universities along with Oregon, Auburn, and Oregon State that have a mass timber program within the School of Design, Planning, and Construction. So, God willing, if the project moves forward, suffice it to say, Sandra Lupian and her team, George Berghorn, great study applications to really study how do we build these buildings faster, so then we give confidence for other developers to do it and the subcontractors to build it.
Vice Chair.
So you've been talking a lot about construction, but I think Ms. Whiten said there was no construction plan in your packet.
Sure.
So do you have an idea of when construction would be, how long it would take? Would you close down Grand River?
Right.
Where would all of your materials be, because there's no place around there?
Yeah, great question.
If I may, Evan Williams, Harbor Bay. I knew that some of these more specific questions I would be the one to answer. Draft construction schedule was included in the agenda packet as of today as a response to the city comments. There is an MOT plan that was included with our site plan application that shows our draft, not confirmed by the city by any means, but our first thoughts as to where we would ask for potential lane closures, including Charles Street and the alleyway. We don't anticipate shutting down anything on Grand River because that's a state highway.
I actually have a follow-up question about closures.
Please.
Don't go. I did see that the tentative plan was to close Charles Street, one lane of Grand River, and the alleyway. Is the Grand River closure, it sounds like that's not happening because that is a state trunkway?
Yeah, we think it'd be more difficult. It would be ideal, but it would have to get approved by MDOT.
Okay, and then the second question was the alleyway and the Charles Street closure. How long do you anticipate those being closed? The entire construction time, a minimal construction time that just is, and will you have sort of plans for pedestrian traffic, especially during, I'm guessing the fall is going to be a little bit pedestrian traffic heavy?
Yeah, so that's one of the things we would want to make sure that we're working through with the building department to ensure that we're meeting all the safety requirements that our general contractor would already set forward. But I would say, just generally speaking, not being the expert in the room on construction specifically, we would look to have the one-way southbound on Charles and then the alleyway closed to the extent of the eastern property line of the easternmost parcel from the beginning of construction in August, which is when demo would start, until the tower crane comes down, which would be roughly February of 2028. But again, I preface that by saying I'm not the expert on all of those specific details, and I know that we'll work with the building department to ensure that we're meeting all of their requirements.
Okay, so all of Charles Street, only half of Charles Street will be closed? All of Charles Street.
Just the southbound lanes on
Okay.
Charles Street.
Thanks. Do you have a, sorry.
That's right.
It's not my.
Just in reference, they are required to provide an alternate pedestrian way around the construction site. They'll have to mark it and make sure it's a safe access.
Perfect, thank you, that
Thank
was
you.
my question.
Commissioner Ramirez Roberts?
Yeah, so when you said August, that would be August of this year with wrap-up in February of 2028?
That's correct.
I had a design question, given that this is the second building on Grand River Avenue that will have this sort of, I don't know how else to describe it, like an M-shaped design with the inset, with sort of the patio right there. What's the thought process behind that design? Does it increase the sight lines, the lighting? Like, what's the purpose of shaping it that way?
Yeah, sure. And we know that well because we were obviously the ones that developed Landmark. I think you're trying to have good urban design principles to maximize net rentable square footage in an urban design application, right? So typically you're going to have a double loaded corridor, right? So I look at the alphabet, right? Typically we're looking at, a building could be an L, a building could be a C, or a building could be an E, right? And depending on the urban application, density, so on and so forth. In this case, we decided for an E. You typically have a 60-foot leg, right? Double loaded corridor, 30 feet off the hallways, just to maximize space. You get into kind of, in my opinion, esoteric debates about like swimming pools. We're not a big fan of that, but my other colleagues of mine debate that all day long. So, what's interesting about this, and again, I'm passionate about mass timber, but like the unit itself in the arms race amenities, we hear all the cliches come out, the gyms, the lobbies, this, that, and everything. Truthfully, a resident spends 90% of their time in the unit, and the unit is what's forgotten. So with mass timber, again, biophilia, I didn't even know what that term meant 10 years ago. But man, when I walked in that Heinz building, that building just spoke to me differently. I just felt better being in that building. So this building, the best amenity of this building is the unit itself, the health of the resident. Again, the first of its kind in the state of Michigan.
I thought that in the agenda packet, you had a whole section in there about community interaction, community feedback, and one of the things that stood out to me throughout all of your community feedback is an emphasis on showcasing the mass timber within the building. I know you described the open concept with the roofs. Is there any other ways that inside the building you can tell this is a mass timber building?
For sure. I think that really resonated with us a lot. We had the 2 town hall meetings. I think back actually to our Cleveland project, and we missed on that. We just missed it. Obviously unintentionally, but I love that building, but and we still own that building, operate that building, but no one knows. I've had more comments go like, how do we know it's a mass timber building? People don't know until they get in and experience it. So that really got flushed out in some of those town hall meetings. Some people were attended that were, more of a design, experts per se. And in that design charrette became this introduction of the colonnade, which, I was nervous that if the building is at the sight line, even the generous kind of width of the Grand River sidewalk, it's just not comfortable given the vehicular traffic, buzzing by. So it really needed to do something. Setting the whole building back would obviously be economically unfeasible going up. So introducing this colonnade, and then the colonnade detail was that the introduction of mass timber in that colonnade, right? So mass timber there, mass timber columns. We would love for the restaurants, we'll get into this with them, but to have that kind of introduction of mass timber into the restaurant itself. So that was really the expression on the grade level floor for the public to experience the mass timber in addition to the residents themselves.
I was going to save it for later, but since you mentioned it, I saw you had specified 2 restaurants that are going to be locating there. Is that speculative, or do you already have agreements in place? Could you speak
It is
briefly about that?
speculative. We're very passionate about this particular topic. Without passionate about a lot of things, obviously. But if you take Center City, we had endless amounts of nationals that wanted to sign up. And it was important to us to meet the Nick Pydocks of the world, to meet Jake Holly at Barrio, to meet Tony Grant and John Carlson of Jolly Pumpkin. So our wish is for that to happen there as well. So that, and that was really a lot of the feedback that we received in town halls. I made the joke, but someone literally said, please, not another chicken place, right? And so I think these are the things that developers wrestle with, where they chase credit. If they're a merchant builder, a lot of questions will come up and say, well, does the developer want to just sell the development? Are they chasing credit, or is it a long-term hold, right? Tough question to answer, honestly, as a developer. I would say that we designed to do a long-term hold, but we're cognizant of the market. We have investors, we have bankers, but we manage our own properties. We're still owning the Cleveland deal, and I think that location with a colonnade wants to be something great. There's obviously a new coffee place that opened right at the State News building to the east, so we don't need any coffee either. So it's just trying to find that balance, and we do not, above everything, want any vacant retail. So it's trying to not have too much retail. If you can tell in the pink, actually, that's building amenity, and the green is retail. That's done because we just don't want too much retail. We want it to be purposeful, and we want it to be occupied.
Great. So the focus and emphasis is on sort of non-college aimed demographic, broader focus.
Yeah, that was the main thing that came in looking at the comprehensive plan report. It's just saying, hey, diversification of retail. That really was also a byproduct of the colonnade outdoor seating, but doing it right. So having the planters, having a kind of a bifurcation, another further bifurcation from the vehicular traffic on Grand River. All that has to be very, very carefully done with careful placemaking.
And then, if I may, to the question of the qualifying design to meet the additional bonus coverage, that's the two specific retailers. So those will be open to the public, to answer your question, Commissioner Denault.
I have a follow-up question, actually. What if one of those restaurants does close and therefore the outdoor seating is no longer provided? Do you have a contingency in place to continue to provide an amenity space that would meet those requirements?
So both of the outdoor seating spaces are roughly 900 square feet. So we would need both restaurants not to be open and completely closed in order to not meet that requirement. But we have not actively worked on a contingency plan, but we absolutely can.
Mr. Chapin?
I'll take a question here. So there's, and we may hear from the State News here in public comment, but they wrote a really nice letter in the packet, as did the Lansing Chamber of Commerce. In my mind, it's sort of a macro, the Lansing Chamber of Commerce, the State News, important to our community. So talk about being a good neighbor, addressing those issues, which I think are reasonable issues.
Yeah.
And I think, while you're up here, I think you're going to speak later, but I'd like to hear you just talk about being a good neighbor. You're going to be the Goliath on that block, and we want you to be a good Goliath.
Yeah, sure.
But we want this to work. I'll speak for myself.
For sure.
So talk about being a good neighbor and specifically react to the State News input.
Yeah, great question. Well, listen, first and foremost, we met right before the meeting, and I think the commonality was, let's find a reasonable, solution, right? And so reasonable obviously is a little bit of a, maybe in the eye of the beholder, but here's what I could say, is that number one, this is an urban design corridor that we want to be cognizant of what the B3 district is wanting to do in urban design principles. For example, there doesn't need to be any setback on that eastern boundary unless it's touching a residential district, which is not. The State News is in the B3 commercial district. Having said that, above floor 2, which is basically at the same linear plane as the State News, we're voluntarily stepping the building back 5 feet 1 inch, going all the way up to level 12. So I too just read that letter about an hour ago. So I would just say that there's already a setback in place, number one. Number two, they can preserve all the rights, just like anybody can, to develop the property if and when they want to develop the property. Number three, we previously had a 168-foot building. It did not move forward for various reasons. including just listening to public feedback. So now it's at 139 feet. That's about a 20% plus or minus reduction in height. We're trying to be cognizant of trying to, I don't know what the word was, to, Alicia, what was it? Was to be surrounding, within reason of surrounding properties, right? And so, yes. So is that a perfect solution? I want to be respectful of the other person, but that would be my response.
I will also say, while I have the floor here, maybe I still do, the student bookstore has been a wonderful neighbor of our community for a long time, and we don't want to upset that relationship that student bookstores had and the Ballline families had for such a long time. So I love your enthusiasm for mass timber. I was on the mass timber committee that worked, so I can appreciate some of what you've said. But at the same time, 10 years from now, this beautiful building will be built, perhaps, I think. But we want that beautiful building to be a good neighbor when you're off to the next project. So I speak for, I think, many in East Lansing. So just be a good neighbor.
Sure.
Fair enough.
Appreciate that.
All right.
Commissioner Ramirez Roberts.
Yeah, I guess I had a question for staff here. So if both of the restaurants did go vacant or something like that, but they were actively trying to lease the space, would that still count under the, I guess, use?
Yeah, it would.
For like the outdoor space for the,
For the bonus allotment?
yeah, the bonus allotment?
There would have to be some condition tied into a timing mechanism,
Okay.
that they couldn't just be perpetually vacant and utilize that amenity without having a backup plan.
Okay.
Okay.
You guys want to talk about parking at all?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want to
Okay.
proceed to parking and traffic?
Sure. Okay, parking. Maybe I'll start off by saying that it's an opinionated subject, right? So I have an opinion on it. I'm not saying that my opinion is right. But I am an urban design enthusiast, and I believe in urban design. I believe that this sounds crazy, but I think in 20 years, cars are going to be functionally obsolete. There's a lot of data that says municipal parking garages, watch out. I mean, it's coming. One example of a really cool podcast on the All In podcast I was listening to is that who's more safer, a robot or a person eventually, right? The insurance carriers are going to force people to have robotic cars because robotics are actually safer than humans. Okay, so I'm not trying to do back to the future on anybody, but I'm just saying that I think as we look into urban design principles again, I think that we have to be cognizant of what's coming down the pipeline, number one. Number two, looking at the system, 3,000 plus or minus parking spots at the peak, and this is all in the packet, right? So I don't want to belabor the point, and just cut me off if I am belaboring the point. But at peak occupancy, there's 1,000 vacant spaces. You peel back the onion further, and the Division ramp and the Charles ramp are at 50% peak occupancy, right? So there's massive amounts of parking in the system. Totally respect Caleb Sharo saying that they can only get 215 spots. I totally get that. The reality is the market probably responds to the parking the way that the market wants to respond. Meaning, we can't build parking per the ordinance. I think it would be advantageous, although it's a decision obviously for the city, to enter into a master lease from a revenue guarantee standpoint, just to maximize good, prudent source of capital for the city on a long-term lease. Alternatively, and we're fine with this, the developer could not enter into a lease, and the residents could then go to Mr. Sharo and rent the spaces on the demand basis as needed, right? That'd be the other way of doing it. There are a couple of data points within reason. I understand that East Lansing is East Lansing. It's not Madison, Wisconsin, or Columbus, Ohio, right? I get that. But in those particular instances, they also have zero parking requirements. We're building zero parking at our Ohio State deal right now. So I believe in urban design. I don't believe in cars within reason. If it was in suburbia, I would have a different thesis to that. I get it. But we believe that in a perfect situation, we would want maybe plus or minus 150 spots. When we did Center City and built the Center City garage, we entered into a long-term agreement we actually come together after every 5 years and reevaluate that, because at some point, maybe we want less cars, right, as an owner. It's a little bit of an uneasy feeling to enter into a 30-year lease when all of a sudden what happens if it dips below that demand threshold and we're still paying that payment to the city, right? So it kind of works both ways. But again, generally speaking, from just looking at the data, I don't want to, no rhetoric here, I look at the data, and there's a lot of vacancy in the parking system right now. Good example on the hub, for example, as I was kind of thinking, I was listening to what you were saying, I would think or submit to the hub, I've actually walked it, the hub to downtown is a 13-minute walk, right? So, and they have no city garage right next to the hub. So I think that it's a little bit of an outlier. Obviously, if the Division Street here has capacity, and that's got to be obviously up to the city to determine that, and the capacity wants to be rented either by the developer or by the occupants itself, I think that's obviously the decision for the city to make.
So I just had a couple of additional last kind of responses or answers, because obviously there's a lot of information here. Really quick turnaround to getting a lot of the city comments. Again, in the agenda packet, there's a 4-ish page response packet that I put together. We have a lot of people working really hard to make sure that we can answer all the questions. And if we can't have answers to those questions, we want to be able to work with the city, whether it's any specific division or the planning department. So we are totally committed to that. I would say the majority of the questions have been answered, and if they aren't answered, we'll have drawing revisions available shortly. Just a couple of the key points that I would make. In the agenda packet, as an attachment, again, as I mentioned before, you'll see that there's a construction schedule draft there. There's also a stormwater detention report that shows an 88% reduction to the existing stormwater runoff of the site. In regards to the engineering questions on the sidewalk on Charles Street, 6 foot is required. We have 9 foot 4 inches of clearance. And for the second floor terrace, we'll add the doors to the site plan, and that specific terrace guardrail on the south side of the building will be at least 42 inches per code. So happy to answer all those other super minutia details, but just in general, I think most of those comments are addressed in that response letter that Ms. Wrighton was not able to review just yet.
I had a traffic question. So I thought your traffic report / study was pretty insightful. I was looking at page 213. It seems like you guys have a particular pain point with the northbound crossover from Grand River and Charles right there. Are you making any modifications to account for that? Is it just kind of a function of where the building's structured? Is there any other solutions you're contemplating?
I wish that I had the expertise to be able to answer that question, but I will absolutely make sure that there's follow-up to that.
Okay, got it. And then I asked city staff this question earlier. I'll ask you the same question, just a general comment about stormwater impact on the site post-development.
Yeah, so that's those are the 3 pages by Kebs in the report
Okay.
That Ms. Wrighton wasn't able to review just yet. 100-year plan is reviewed, and there's an 88% reduction to the overall stormwater runoff of the building. There's a very large underground detention tank that we'll be installing on the northwest corner of the building underneath the bike parking.
That was my next question. Thank you. Any other questions?
Could I elaborate on
Commissioner
that comment really quick?
Please,
Just
yeah.
Urban design. Think of it this way, which I think is kind of beautiful from a stormwater standpoint. By doing that and not having parking in an urban design application, right, it allows us to be innovative with our stormwater engineering, right? So that those two go hand in hand, and I think that's sometimes missed. But I really believe that one allows another asset from an engineering standpoint to happen based on sound urban design principles.
Thank you. Commissioner Denault, did you have a question?
Yes. Can you talk a little bit about what is planned for the amenity space? I know the packet mentions a gym. Is it a gym for sure? What's going in that space?
On the grade level?
Mm-hmm.
On the eastern kind of bookend would be, right now is a gym.
Okay.
Mhm.
And that's like for sure?
Yes.
Okay. I had a question about the public art requirement. So you estimate that construction costs will be 2.5 million. You're required, I think, for 1% of that to go towards,
What's the 2.5?
Is it 2.5? I think you're right. I think it's
Is it it's $2.5 million?
2.5 million.
Is related
I was
to?
told there'd be no math.
Yeah, there's a cap there's a cap on the calculation of $25,000. But I'll let Mark answer because he's more of an artist than I am. I'm just an engineer.
But you knew that you could do the math.
Yes.
And so I just wanted a general question about, because that is tied to how much construction costs are, will that change
Yeah.
over time, or is it a set cost, or?
As it relates to the art requirement.
Correct.
Right? Yeah, I mean, it's just a mathematical function. I know that he laughs at me, but I'm very passionate about the art requirement. I mean, like I look at Center City, and we have that muralist, and then it's on the alley, and then it's next to a grease trap. Now it doesn't really look that great, kind of, so I just think that I look forward to talking with the Arts Commission about doing something very purposeful, not a mural, hopefully, which I think is the cop-out amongst developers, so, yeah.
Okay, I think my question, and maybe I just didn't phrase it right,
Sure.
will that amount that you're spending on the art requirement change in response to overall construction costs?
I think so.
Okay,
No, it's not, was it capped at 25,000?
Maximum is $25,000.
okay.
Okay.
We overspent on the mural that we did.
Right.
The artwork we did there, but that was our choice.
I guess that was more of a question for staff. Sorry, staff.
The maximum is 25% or $25,000, not 25%, $25,000. They will far exceed that with their construction costs.
Perfect. Thank you. The other question that I had was about, we talked a little bit about transit, right, about parking and not trying to discourage people from using cars. Do you have any plans to give residents, I know we don't use tokens anymore, but bus passes?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great question. And I saw that staff, and maybe one of the most recent ordinances, actually earmarked that as a solution. We would be totally open-minded to that. Obviously, the CATA line is right there, so it's, TOD transit, which makes all the sense in the world, so, yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, I have two more questions. Cooperation with the city's arborist, who has recommended that you have a diversity of trees instead of all the same trees. Is that something that y'all would be amenable to?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then last question, Ms. Wrighton pointed out that y'all do not say anything about rents and what rents would be. It just says market rate. Is there any details you can provide about that?
Yeah.
Yes, that's included in the response. So on a per bed basis, there's a range, $1,200 to $2,200 per bed per month.
Thank you.
Vice Chair?
Can I ask a couple of questions about safety?
Yeah.
So I noticed that Tim Schultz, city staff, said he'd like to see a life safety plan with travel distance to egress, exits for floors. So that's one of my questions, like how do you address that? And the other question I was more general about fire protection. Is there a difference with mass timber, like fire prevention or fire code that is different from concrete buildings, and how do you address that?
Yeah. I love engineering questions, as you can tell. To the first question, by code, we're required to meet all the ADA requirements and the maximum travel distances, dead end requirements, so on and so forth, in order to pull a building permit that Mr. Schultz is referencing. It's just a function of the evolution of design. So I would say within the next 60 days or so, there will be a draft sheet that'll be available for the building department to start reviewing. As it relates to fire protection, yes, absolutely, the building is 100% sprinkled to NFPA 13 requirements. We've been working with the fire department specifically on a lot of those design details. Again, it's more or less a function of the evolution of design. So we've met with the fire department briefly, discussed the location of the fire pump room, the PIV valve on Grand River, the fire alarm room being next to the elevator bank. All of it comes as a function of how the fire department wants to be able to respond in case of an emergency. Specific to mass timber versus concrete, there's no major differences other than when we talk about fire rating of specific mass timber components. So, for instance, a concrete deck in terms of PT construction might be 8 inches thick. and have a 2-hour fire rating. In terms of mass timber, we have to meet that with the mass timber slab itself, and then we also have to pour additional concrete on top of that and have different direct applied gypsum board to ceilings in different areas of the building. All of that's encompassed as a part of what's required in the 2021 IBC code.
Commissioner Ramirez Roberts?
Yeah, so I guess I have two separate questions. So one of the things that was brought up by Tim Schultz was the alley unloading and basically whether or not the city vehicles would be able to get in. I don't know if you had anything for that.
So it wasn't ready to be sent just yet, but there will be a follow-up with turn studies for emergency vehicles in general, general other vehicles. There is commercial loading and unloading proposed on Charles Street within curb inset. That's where Mr. Shar was calling out for there to be some paid metering. So I think it's a combination of the both, or of both of those subjects, and ultimately what we really need to do is just work with the city staff and with DPW in order to make sure that we're meeting all of the requirements or wishes.
And I guess the second part there was, and I guess this might be more directed to staff, where if this project, I guess, gets approved before the city potentially approves the diverse housing ordinance that we talked about at our last meeting, if this project gets approved before that, would it apply retroactively since it's still in construction, or would it only be if this project is approved after the other one is approved?
We've discussed
Landon,
this.
do you wanna-
I'm sorry?
I was going to say if you wanted to chime in, seems like you were going to.
Yeah, we've discussed it at some length with the city attorney, and we have some different opinions. My understanding is we're not entirely sure how to answer that, I guess.
Okay.
Essentially, we believe that if this is approved before the ordinance becomes approved, assuming that both happen, then this would not be subject to the ordinance. We're still waiting on clarification.
And then I guess this is a question for you is, so let's say diverse housing ordinance, the amendments to that doesn't pass. What would be the plan for this project if it does get approved? Or,
This project doesn't require diverse housing because
Oh, it
it's a site
doesn't?
plan.
oh, okay.
And they're utilizing the 8 stories by right with the
Okay.
2 sets of additional 2 stories for incentives.
Apologies.
Well, that's a really good question, Josh. We'll have to keep track of that. I think that's worthy of continued conversation.
And just to comment on that, Josh, if I may, I compliment Ordinance 1536 for this reason. And we're happy to provide detail on what I'm about to say. The hard costs on this project is right around $100 million. Might be a little bit more, might be a little bit less when we buy it out, working with the subs right now. The mass timber and lead gold premium cost is about $8 million. So it's about 8%, okay, which I look at that ordinance, and this is why I compliment the ordinance, is that the ordinance, in order to get the mass timber, in order to get the gold lead, of which only 2 of these buildings in the entire country are there, it's about an $8 million premium, right? So when we look at the diversified housing ordinance, there's been a couple other ordinances that have been introduced. We've heard loopholes and different things. This is anything but a loophole. This is a passionate project that costs more to build, which I hope will reduce. I mean, we have to build more of these projects to teach subcontractors to get American manufacturing in the state of Michigan. This is what the goal and the thesis is, right? So I just want to make that point because I think that 1536, I don't think there's going to be a lot of developers that are going to be proposing mass timber gold lead certified buildings in the next 3 years here in East Lansing. I'm excited, and we are excited, and the Ballheim family is excited to have this innovation at the doorstep, and it's a result of 1536. One final point, which is important if I'm in your shoes, is I did like to, I saw a pre-certification of gold lead, right? It's not easy to get gold lead, and Evan's way better than me than talking about it, but we work with the USGBC Green Building Council to get it pre-certified so that we're not over-promising and under-delivering. Here's the plans, here's the schematic set into DD and to CDs, here's how it's going to be, then you got to build it, make sure that it's following the building permits, but that pre-certification is absolutely critical.
Any additional comments or questions? Did you have anything else to present on this?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, sounds like we have a few outstanding items to clean up. I think this may set the record for the longest agenda packet I've ever seen at 466 pages, so a lot of reading materials for us all. What?
Not that it's a contest.
I'm certainly not trying to start a competition. But I appreciate your presentation and your overview. And are there any additional directions for city staff? Commissioner Chapin?
No, I don't. I'm ready for public comment.
Okay,
I think
great.
that's- No, I'm ready.
All right, at this point, we will open the public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you. And bring forward members of the public to address this item. Up first is, I have one card up here, Nolan Moody.
Thank you and good evening, members of the commission. My name is Nolan Moody. I'm an attorney for the State News. I heard from Commissioner Chapin that I know at least some of you have read our letter that was submitted today. And those that haven't, I encourage you to please read it. We're up here not to try and stop this project. It seems like a beautiful building. It seems like there's many benefits. We do have concerns as a neighbor, and most of those concerns come from what we consider a site plan that has missing pieces that don't answer what happens to the State News building, and how do we work together to get that done. I heard Mark come up here and say he looks forward to working with us and having conversations. I hope that's true, and I hope that after this meeting, we are able to have those conversations so that we can come back up here at a future site plan commission meeting and voice our approval of what's been done. But as we sit here right now, there are two primary concerns that we have as neighbors that we feel like are just not addressed or are inadequately addressed. And the first was the step back. We are right next door to what will be a 12-story building. The State News is a 2-story building. And there was a 0 step back. I did see recently that there's now a 5-foot step back. Respectfully, that's still not going to fix the issues when you're dealing with a residential building. They're putting windows on the side of the building that's going to face the State News. And then you still don't have a life safety plan or the other pieces of the plan that go into ensuring this residential building is made correctly. And the reason why that matters is because the State News could someday look to build up or could use its northward space if it wanted to. But if the building is too close, of course, that makes it nearly impossible. And the 5-foot step back that was recently proposed still isn't enough. Now, my hope is that we can have a conversation and we can figure that out ourselves. But as presently proposed, our request to this commission would be to either withhold their decision on recommending anything to the city council on that issue, or if it were to approve a recommendation now, it would be with the requirement that a further step back is made that would be sufficient for the State News to be able to do what it wanted with its building at a later date. That was issue number one that really comes to the forefront for us. The second issue, and I know the entire commission has already addressed it in numerous ways, but I just want to speak to it from the State News perspective, is the staging development and construction plan. I saw that there was a one-page attachment that was submitted today with some very general dates. It doesn't provide the detail that we need. And the biggest concern we have is the State News has tenants. It has Panda Express, it has Foxtail Coffee, and it has the Detroit Wing Company. Those tenants use the alley where, State News is right here, the Howard would go right here, the alley extends the entire way in the back. That alley is used for supply chain for food. It's used for all business deliveries. That is actually the entrance for the State News. And I heard for the first time tonight that the plan was to shut down the entire alley, including our portion of it, for 19 months. That candidly is essentially unworkable for these businesses. The Panda, just to give an example, Panda Express gets 2 to 3 deliveries a week for food. It uses the alley to deliver them. There's no secondary plan. There's no, how do we work around this? There's no discussion at all. It's just, we're going to shut down your alley for 19 months. And we need more to understand what's going on. We need a more detailed plan so that we can understand it. And again, the hope is to have that conversation that Mark talked about so we can work it out. But if not, and as we sit here tonight without that detail, we ask that there is no recommendation of approval of the site plan in its current form because those details are not there. Those are the two primary concerns that I sit here right now and ask the commission to consider. The commission has already noted these other things, so I'm going to just briefly touch on them. But the construction is going to cause significant deterioration to roadways, especially the alley. We don't know how those will be remediated or what will be done to fix those when they're done. There's no vibration monitoring plan. There's no shoring underpinning protocol. And we've had no construction protection agreement proposed to us by the other side. These are critical aspects. We're not trying to stop the plan. We're not trying to say don't allow this building to be built. But we are saying to pause until we have the details so we know what's going to happen to our building. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Would anybody else like to step forward and address the commission on this issue? Okay, seeing none. Is anyone online in the queue?
We have one person in the queue. Caller with the number 713, you're free to address the commission, and you may need to unmute your phone.
Thank you. I already spoke.
Thank you.
Section 6.3.
Okay. Thank you. At this point, we will close the public hearing. And then, given there's a lot of information and work to do on this item, we will see it at the subsequent planning commission meeting, right? We're meeting on the 27th, right? Okay. Any additional comments or direction for staff? Seeing
It's a
none?
pending issue, and,
Yeah.
I think this has been a good discussion tonight. Great packet, a lot of pieces in motion, it appears to me, so look forward to our next meeting.
I echo that. Thank you. All right, that takes us on to item 6.2, a public hearing to receive comments
I
on
have
proposed.
one quick
Oh,
question.
Vice Chair.
Could you just let us know when there's additional things? I did all my research and my time on Saturday, and I didn't have time to go back and look at it, so I was a little bit caught off guard that there was so much additional stuff so late. I mean, I know it's not normal, but if we could just get like a warning or something.
A lot of information was provided at the last minute, and then some additional information came in yesterday, and I had not reviewed it either.
Okay, thanks.
Or you can procrastinate like me and do your work this afternoon,
Thanks, guys. Okay, up next, item 6.2, a public hearing to receive comments on proposed ordinance 1572, an ordinance to amend Chapter 50 zoning, Division 5 residential rental restriction overlay districts of the Code of the City of East Lansing to add a new section 50-778, removal of property from the rental restriction overlay districts. Mr. Bartley.
Thank you. So, yes, this is an ordinance proposed by members of City Council that would amend the zoning ordinance to allow, under very specific and narrow circumstances, removal of properties from a residential rental restriction overlay district. Currently, I guess there is a process for establishing a residential rental restriction overlay district. I guess I want to talk a little bit about sort of those districts and how they're established, and then talk about what the proposed ordinance says. So essentially, a neighborhood can, if they have at least 50 properties, or a discrete neighborhood unit that's smaller but definitely its own unit, somebody within that neighborhood can petition their neighbors, and if they get at least two-thirds of the property owners within the specified area, they can then return that petition to the city and request that there is a rental restriction overlay district that will be applied to that area. And at which point there would be an ordinance that would be created to, this essentially a zone change. So it would come through the Planning Commission and City Council public hearings at each to be approved. There are currently 22 districts across the city. We did a little bit of research to find out, I guess, what the current extent of rental restriction overlay districts is. We found that there are about 8,154 parcels in the city of East Lansing. To be eligible for a residential rental restriction overlay, your parcels have to be zoned R1, R2, or RM8. There are about 75% of the parcels in the city are zoned that way, and 3,702 parcels with that zoning are located in an existing rental restriction overlay district, which means about 54% of eligible parcels are within an overlay. We also found that there are 233 licensed rentals within an existing overlay, so that means that they're essentially non-conforming. If those rentals go away for any reason, those properties could no longer be rented. And then finally, we found that 13% of all single-family houses in the city currently have a rental license, which represents about 11% of all renters. So that's sort of current state. And there really isn't a process that's clearly defined in the code to amend or remove a property, I guess amend a district in any way. Our understanding and sort of our best advice to people who have inquired about doing that, and in the 2.5 years I've been here, I probably have fielded probably 25 to 30 requests. But essentially, our best advice is we believe that you need to follow the same procedures as to establish one. So you need to go and petition the area within the district and get 2/3 of property owner signatures. That causes some sort of practical difficulty, however, because essentially if a property owner wants to remove their property, they would then have to, the petitioner has to be within the district, so they would have to rely on somebody in the district that is they're proposing to remove themselves from. They'd have to rely on somebody else to do the petitioning, and they'd also have to rely on 2/3 of the property owners in the district that they're trying to leave to approve or to sign on to their proposal. So that represents some difficulty, and we believe that this is one of the reasons why there has not yet been, since rental restriction overlay districts have been established, there has not been removal of any properties from them. The current ordinance proposes some sort of pathway to get out. Essentially, the criteria to be eligible for removal would be that the applicant's property must be located on one side of a city block where other homes on the same side of the city block are not subject to the rental overlay district in question. So that's one. Number two, the applicant's property must be owner-occupied and not currently rented. And number three, no more than 2 owner-occupied unrented properties, including the applicant's property, may exist on the same side of the city block as the applicant's property. My understanding is that the way this was drafted was essentially trying to be narrow enough that it would only apply to a few properties in the city. I think the council members were looking to be responsive to the constituents who asked for it. But we've been able to identify about 10 to 15 properties across the whole city that would meet these circumstances. So it would be a very limited application if this were to be adopted as proposed. The Housing Commission has discussed it at some length. They did so on April 8th and then again on May 7th. I went to the May 7th meeting, and a couple of commissioners have included some comments in your packet. I should mention we also have a lot of letters and emails either in support or in opposition to this ordinance. At the end of the day, on May 7th, the Housing Commission ultimately voted to recommend that City Council not adopt this ordinance as introduced, instead recommending that there should be a section to allow removal, but this essentially is not the way to do it. So, and I'm sorry, I'm just paraphrasing, those weren't the words, but essentially that was the outcome. From the staff's perspective, I also don't recommend adoption of this ordinance as proposed. I think that there certainly needs to be a process for removal of properties from a district. The sort of principle of zoning is that you can add yourself to a district or you can remove yourself from a district, and this sort of district has significant impacts on a property, not always established by the owner of that property, and they need to have the ability to change their zoning, including overlay districts. So it's sort of a generally accepted principle of planning and zoning, and not having that ability is not a best practice. We'd like to change that. So I'm very interested as professional planner to see some sort of avenue created. I don't recommend that the criteria for being eligible for removal be so narrow. I think that there are other options. I'm not quite sure what those are. I think this is a great opportunity to start the conversation. But again, just to put it out there, I as staff am not recommending approval in its current form. I would suggest that if the Planning Commission ultimately sends this ordinance back to the planning or to the City Council with a recommendation for adoption, I would suggest that it would include some sort of a sunset provision or a provision to review a specific overlay at a certain frequency, probably a regular period, maybe every 5 years, and perhaps require the same kind of petitioning to go through again. And if we don't have 2/3 majority, I guess, that are supporting that, then maybe the council could at least take that into consideration when they re-review each overlay. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm trying to explain the RROs and how they work, the process, and what the current ordinance proposes. I'd love to answer any questions before we open the public hearing.
Real quick, I think that context is really helpful for me as I'm trying to understand the impetus for this, and it seems like it's a very few specific scenarios that they're trying to consider and craft an ordinance. So to me, I think initially it's really two questions. Since number one is, do you think a mechanism should be in place to allow a property to be removed from an overlay district? And then the second question really is this the best way to do it? So with that, I saw a couple hands over here. Ramirez Roberts, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I guess I have a few questions, so I'll just ask a couple and then let other people go. So I guess my first one, and this just came up, is as you're speaking, with the rental houses, or I guess the properties that have rental licenses already in the overlay. Let's say that, like I'm looking at the Bailey neighborhood one right now. If one of those rental properties loses their rental license, or maybe they just, choose to let it go, or they say, I guess, would they even have to lose their rental license, but just simply say that they're owner occupied? Would they then be able to remove themselves under this provision if they meet the other criteria?
No.
No, so holding the rental license at all?
I guess if the rental license is abandoned or goes away for some reason, and you're currently within an overlay, you cannot get that back.
Yeah, so sorry.
I should just specify, there are 3 different types of rental restriction overlay districts.
Yeah.
So RO1, RO2, RO3. RO1 is most restrictive, no new licenses. RO2 is essentially saying no new licenses after the current owner of the license leaves. And number 3 is only Class 1 licenses, which is the owner occupied with 1 roomer. So there are some opportunities for very limited rentals in certain types. RO1 is by far the most common district that we have. But I'm not sure that I understood your question, so let's...
Yeah, let me rephrase that. So if there's a home or property that currently owns a rental license within the overlay district, but then the owner of the property moves into that home, could the owner of that property, even if it maintains the rental license, but it's technically owner occupied now, could they opt, or I guess petition, to be removed from the overlay district?
I see. Under the current ordinance, no. The status of a property having a license or not does not affect whether or not it's in the overlay. The overlay supersedes that. So the overlay is essentially going over the other zone districts, whatever it might be. So you might have R1, R2, RM8. The overlay can go over any of those. And now it's applying to those properties no matter what their status is, with the license or not. So if the license went away and the owner was owner occupying, that's fine. They can be there. It hasn't changed whether or not the overlay applies. It still applies. It would just not, they would still not be able to get their license back.
So I guess what I'm referencing is in relation to this particular ordinance.
Okay.
Could a property with a rental license, where let's say it maintains the rental license, but the owner of the property moves in, keeps the rental license, could the owner of that property under this ordinance petition to remove it from the overlay while maintaining the rental license?
I see. I think I understand your question now. I apologize. Yes, I believe so. My reading of the ordinance is that if the applicant's property is owner-occupied and not currently rented, it could still be maintaining a license and holding on to it, but it can't be currently being rented. Otherwise, it's not eligible. But if it's not being rented, even if it has a license, it could be eligible to be removed.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on what the definition of owner-occupied is, right? There's no time
Yeah.
limit for how long they have to live there, and maybe they have to change their voting residency or something, I don't know.
And I guess my follow-up question to that, my mind is blanking at the moment, but I guess I'll let someone else go and the question will come back to me. It's going to take me a second.
Okay. Any other hands down here? I thought I saw one. You guys?
I don't really have a question. I have some comments.
Commissioner Chapin,
Appropriate time. I don't have a
proceed.
question right now.
Not right now? Okay.
Comments.
I have a comment.
Landon, you said 2/3. Where's that provision? What subsection is that? I'm looking for that. And that's a deviation from the percentage that's required to establish the overlay. And is it 2/3 of a block, 2/3 of the whole overlay? What is it?
2/3 of the proposed overlay.
Where's that?
In the, let me find here. So I have an excerpt of this section. It's in section 50-775, procedures, subsection 1D. So the petition must contain the signature and address of 2/3 of the parcel owners within the proposed boundary of the overlay district exclusive of public property. Jointly owned parcels are considered owned by a single person for petitioning, but a co-owner may be able to sign. So only one owner of each parcel will count towards this 2/3 requirement. If a person owns more than one parcel, they can sign for each parcel.
Okay. Ramirez Roberts.
I remembered my question now. So I guess going along with my other one, would this petition, I guess, would it be up to council discretion, or legally would it essentially, in terms of not getting sued, be a grant by right, where if you meet the criteria and you petition, it would be discriminatory for the council to deny you removal?
Under the current ordinances proposed, there is no petition requirement. The petition is only required right now to establish a district. I brought that up as a potential, what I would see as a change to the ordinance.
I meant like the property owner petitioning.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, then I think you better restate, because I'm sorry. Can you state that?
Yeah, so if the property owner, I guess if I'm a property owner and I petition to have my property, I petition city council to have my property removed from the overlay.
Yes.
Using this ordinance, is there a mechanism in place where the council can say, well, because it doesn't meet this we believe it could be harmful in these ways, or is it set up in such a way where it's essentially an approved by right, where if you meet the criteria and you petition to have your property removed, that city council doesn't effectively have a mechanism to deny it?
Okay, I understand. Thank you. Council has the final say on a zone change. So, as written, that if eligible and it would meet those narrow circumstances, the property owner could then petition essentially through the rezoning process to have their property removed from the overlay. And so that requires public hearing by both Planning Commission and Council. The Council has the final decision on that. If they find that it doesn't meet the standards for rezoning at that time, they could turn down that rezoning request. So Council doesn't have, there is no obligation to approve, I guess, or to deny. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
I think? Okay, good.
Comments or questions?
I just have a question for
Overby.
Landon.
Sure.
So you mentioned that there seems to be an informal process that you could use to get out of an overlay district, and it's mentioned in the write-up. And you also mentioned that you had contacts from some number of people that were interested in getting out of the overlay district. Why did those people not pursue this, the getting out of the overlay district? Did they not think there was a process? Did they think the process was onerous? What was their thinking?
So I guess you used the word informal, and I wouldn't say it's informal as much as not explicit, right? It's quite kind of unclear because so that we have just been coming back to our understanding is that, hey, this is how an overlay is created. So follow that same process. And I think I explained the issues. I haven't received much response. Typically, when I have received responses back from people, they said, we talked to a few of our neighbors and we don't think we're going to get the signatures. They don't want us to leave, so we don't think that we're going to have luck getting all those signatures, which is why we don't have any other advice to give them other than this is the best we have, is this procedure. So one might argue there's just not a procedure. There is one procedure to establish. That's what we've been falling back on as far as amending as well. But in a handful of cases when people have come back to me, I just said, I polled my neighbors and they wouldn't have signed.
One more comment. Vice Chair.
I just have a comment too I live in Bailey. I know we've heard a lot about overlays over the time I've lived there.
Yeah.
And I think this is a community and neighborhood issue. So I think the unit of analysis is neighborhoods and communities. I think I understand the 2/3 solution is difficult, but I think that's the unit of analysis, not individuals. So I think if we get rid of, if an individual says, I'm special, I want to get out of this, it's sort of a slippery slope, right? You say, oh, well, okay, that's fine. Oh, you're removed too, and you're removed. And then, it just sort of erodes the community and the neighborhood that made agreed to these overlays in the first place. So I get the problems that you're having with the 2/3, but I think anything that we have as a solution should be something that's a larger unit, not individuals asking to get out of their contract with their community.
Noted. That's good. Thank you.
Ramirez Roberts.
Yeah, I apologize if I'm kind of monopolizing this. So I know in the packet it said that you identified potentially 10 to 15 properties as being eligible for removal, but you also noted, and I think it was in Red Cedar or maybe somewhere else, that essentially the removal of 2 of the eligible properties would also create more eligible properties potentially. Is the 10 to 15, I guess, have you guys identified all of those that could possibly be dominoed?
No, I don't. That analysis was done by housing staff, and my understanding from them is that they did not go that extra step to see what would happen if those were removed. I think that would be likely. If one property is removed, then other properties would become eligible, but we haven't done an analysis. I can check tomorrow and see if they're planning on doing that for your next look at this.
So essentially like a domino effect, potentially.
Yes.
But there's 50-778A3, I think that says no more than 2 owner-occupied unrented properties can exist in the same side of the block. So I think that would be a restriction as they propose it, but yeah, I don't know. I'm struggling to
Yeah, that's a weird one.
understand the need for this, but anyways. A quick question on ADUs. Would you remind me, I know we're not permissive of ADUs, but would a rental overlay district restrict the use of an ADU as well?
If it were to be leased out.
Okay.
Yeah, you'd need a rental license for an ADU, for any rented unit, whether it be the full unit or partial. ADU would be considered that as well. So, and right now, I guess we do allow ADUs in one district. My understanding is that, and that's a neo-traditional neighborhood overlay that I think there's only one of, and I believe that they're all deed-restricted, so they can't get ADUs. So for all intents and purposes, we don't allow them anywhere. There is a district that allows it on its face, practically doesn't. But yeah, as far as the ADU goes, it's a dwelling unit. So if the owner was living in that and wanted to rent out their house, they could do so with license. Vice versa, if they were living in the house and wanted to rent out the ADU, they could do so with license, but they need a license for both.
Got it. Thank you. Commissioner Overby.
I just have a comment, and I want to dovetail on Vice Chair Wagner's comment about the community. I live in the Bailey neighborhood, and I believe that of all the city neighborhoods that are vulnerable to student rentals, Bailey is at the top of the list. I can see the rentals, and I assure you, I can hear them when the students are living there. And so the issue of community is going to come into play based on where you live, because various communities in the city have more or less vulnerability to the issue of student rentals. And those that are further away from the university, of course, have less vulnerability. So the issue of distance and community, I believe, is very, very important to taking this into account.
Yeah, I heard you can calculate the number of rentals in the city by listening out your windows in late August, so. All right, any other comments or questions? Ramirez Roberts?
Yeah, I had one. So, I didn't know if it wasn't on the map, but Glencairn a few years ago did put in an overlay district, but I didn't see it brought up here. Is that just because there wasn't any eligible homes in there? Or was it just another reason?
In the housing analysis
Yeah.
of different, I'm assuming, sorry, I'm going to phone a friend. This is our Planning, Building, and Housing Director, Elise Hodges.
Hi, that's my really bad, good evening. That's my really bad graphic design. So I did that, the initial mapping, and correct. So I highlighted the ones that, based on the ordinance proposed, that would potentially be eligible. At least, they met at least 2 to 3 of the, they maybe didn't meet all of them, and I don't believe there are any in that neighborhood.
Okay. And I guess one more comment, I guess, while we're thinking about this is, because I know it got brought up, potentially other mechanisms by which this could be done, and there was this talk about, every 5 to 10 years, having it go through the same mechanism of 2 to 3 petition signatures again. I guess just from a community organization standpoint, that would seem pretty, talking about onerous process, every 5 years having to go and petition the same people every time to maintain this, I guess essentially what they've said they already supported. I guess if we're just thinking about potential formats, maybe the reverse, where every 5 years there could be a 2/3 petition if people, could sign to edit or amend the existing overlay instead of, having to approve it again every 5 years. Every 5 years it could come up for edit or removal if you have the 2/3 signatures.
Okay, I think at this point, we're going to open the public hearing. First, I'm going to read from the cards I have up here. Diane Wing.
Okay, my name is Diane Wing. I am a resident of the Chesterfield Hills neighborhood. Chesterfield Hills is a historic district in East Lansing. I'm a former past president of the Chesterfield Hills Neighborhood Association. I have spoken in front of the Planning Commission on several occasions. I think some of you will recognize me, and you will maybe recognize that all of the issues that I bring in front of you, my concerns are related to neighborhoods. Neighborhood preservation, most specifically. The subject of tonight's public hearing may be the biggest threat to our neighborhoods that the city has created. And make no mistake, the city has created this ordinance to mollify one dissatisfied homeowner at the expense of all other residents who own and live in single-family homes within overlay district neighborhoods. This threatens every single overlay district. It's not just the district that's being talked about by this one particular homeowner. It threatens all of us. If passed, this ordinance will open the door to other property owners in overlay districts, both owner-occupied and homes owned by real estate companies, rental homes, making claims of hardship pressed upon them by the existence of a rental overlay. If passed, this ordinance will begin chipping away at the one tool, the only tool that neighborhoods have to retain their neighborhood's quality of life as primarily owner-occupied dwellings. Each neighborhood, that's all 22 overlay districts, represents a neighborhood, people living there, right? People living in those neighborhoods met the overlay ordinance rules in establishing their own individual boundaries for each overlay district. They're the ones who do it. The neighborhoods do it. They have to organize, they have to plan, they have to make everybody aware, they have to create all of this. It doesn't just like grow out of, whole cloth. Determining the type of overlay district, as Mr. Bartley was noting, there's 3 different types of overlay districts. Think about the debate that has to go in just to figure out what is our overlay district going to be. They have to provide the required notifications to all property owners within the proposed boundary, gaining petition signatures, the 2/3, seeking petition approval by the city clerk, and lastly, approval by city council. Establishing one overlay district can take years of work. I think Chesterfield Hills took almost 3 years of work before we finally got the overlay district approved. Yet this ordinance would weaken a district on the basis of one person's request, and for no reason other than their dissatisfaction, whatever that dissatisfaction may be. Allowing this ordinance to pass would literally undo the hours of work that multiple neighborhoods, multiple residents, citizens of the city of East Lansing who are trying to maintain neighborhoods have done to establish these districts in good faith and following the regulations of the ordinance. It is not hyperbole to say that the ordinance has saved the Chesterfield Hills neighborhood. We are a very small neighborhood. We are directly adjacent to MSU, next to Brody Hall. We are extremely attractive to rental owners, rental companies. If this starts chipping away at it, we are looking at things as to all of a sudden, a neighbor says, oh, my house needs to come out for some reason. They think that they can meet the ownership, the criteria that's been proposed, and all of a sudden we have an Airbnb situation that's coming in. This is not conjecture to state that starting with this ordinance, we will begin to chip away the protections that our neighborhoods have against more rentals. And please remember, any rentals that are in the overlay districts right now, they're grandfathered in. If they were a rental at the time the overlay district was established, they're grandfathered in. The only way they're going to get, quote, out of the district, or I don't know why they really want to, unless, as Commissioner Ramirez-Roberts said, if they were planning to figure a way to do that, is if they lose their license, if the license expires. And even then has a year, it's my understanding, a year that the license has to expire. So the rentals that are in there now will stay there. The problem becomes once you start taking some of these out, you start shifting the boundaries, which has also been a question as to how this ordinance has been written. If a property comes out, does that shift the boundary? Or does it simply remove that particular property from
30 seconds.
From being able to be rented? Even that question hasn't been answered as part of the ordinance. Please, I ask you on behalf of all of the neighborhoods who are already served by this ordinance to please do not recommend that this ordinance be forwarded on to council for approval. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Up next is Ted Benka.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ted Benka. I'm president of the White Hills Neighborhood Association. And to an earlier comment, our neighborhood is not close to campus, but I'm here to support the neighborhoods that are. And I've actually changed what I was going to say tonight after I've read the staff proposal, because that was a 180 from what we've been hearing earlier. And to the extent that the ordinance is poorly drafted. I spoke in front of council when they referred this to planning and housing at 11:30 at night back in March. And the reason was from Councilmember Meadows is that we needed an opt-out process because the city would be subject to legal challenges if you don't have an opt-out process. Planner Brantley has said that he's pretty sure we have one, although it's the same process that creates it, which makes sense to me. I spent a lot of years in the state government passing rules and regulations, and the Attorney General always advised me, Ted, use the same process to undo something that you used to get it done. Now, the ordinance is very specific, and I'll answer the question, what's the primary reason for it? Enhance the value of property. People want to enhance the value of their properties. So do I. But this isn't how you do it. And so I would suggest that you reject this proposal because it's so narrowly constructed. And it's just a horrible piece of legislation to start with. And that's what I told council at 11:30 at night. So you do need to have you do need to have a process. And Commissioner Wagner, I think, touched on the process that I think most neighbors could support. But if you want to flesh that out, fine. But we have these overlay districts for a reason. You're going to hear from many other people who were directly involved in this. I wasn't, but I was around. I've been in my house since 1997. So I've been through a lot of things with the city. So with that, I won't take any more of your time and appreciate it.
Thank you. Justin M. Booth.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Justin Booth. I live at 710 Chittenden Drive. I am also the chair of the Bailey Community Association. I'm here today representing myself, but allowing this modification will create a slippery slope. What modification will come next? My property is on the edge of the Bailey overlay district, and this, the three potential options, this would not allow my property, but what happens if we start adding more to that, it'll just create another slippery slope, and it would be a mistake to approve this. As many of you know, this rental overlay district was developed out of a grassroots movement by the community of East Lansing. This was done through hard work, creative problem solving with city council, listening to our issues, the city attorney, the city staff, and citizens of East Lansing that came together to develop this rental overlay district. My family and neighbors feel comfort in knowing that we have these restrictions in place, and we do not want these changes. I remember going door to door, talking with neighbors in Bailey. There is an overwhelming sense of support that came knowing that the city was putting this ordinance together to support our efforts against the encroaching rentals. And I would second that comment that Bailey would be in a different place today if we did not have those overlay districts. And we, in Bailey, the boundary is not all of the Bailey neighborhood. The district is called the Bailey District, but it is a subset of our neighborhood because we could not get 2/3 of the vote of all of the extra properties because of all the rentals that were coming in from Grand River. So now is not the time to make these changes as we're discussing more developments downtown, more rentals that are moving up into the air of 13, 12 stories. So now is not the time, and it seems only fair. However, if the council feels a need to make changes, that those who wish to change this district should be required to go through this process. These boundaries were not willy-nilly. They are not gerrymandered to pull people in. They were thought through. There was great detail put into this ordinance for how we could draw these boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Chair, can I be momentarily excused for a second?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Up next is Lynn Richardson.
My name is Lynn Richardson, and I am a resident of the Pinecrest neighborhood at 1300 Blanchette Drive. I am the president of the neighborhood association, but I am talking to you tonight on my own. The rental overlay districts were enacted to preserve the character of East Lansing's various neighborhoods. The districts are not anti-rental. Indeed, as others who have spoken before me have noted, there are properties that were rental properties within the district, and they were grandfathered in when the overlay districts were approved. While it is not unusual to hear complaints that rental properties are not maintained, There is no guarantee that properties will be well-maintained, even if they are owner-occupied. As a college town, we live with a substantial transient population, whether it be students, visiting faculty, or new hires looking to get a feel for the city before choosing a neighborhood in which to purchase a home. The rental overlay districts were really created to cultivate micro-communities, if you will. Neighborhoods where you get to know the people who live across the street and down the block, where parents are comfortable with their children playing outdoors and unsupervised with others, and where neighbors help neighbors in large ways and small. As my husband noted when he moved into my Pinecrest home, it's an old-timey neighborhood. The rental overlay district ordinance is somewhat flawed in that it does not explicitly provide a way for the districts, once approved, to have the borders modified or entirely reversed. But I submit that the proposed ordinance before the commission this evening is fatally flawed. First, while the ordinance appears facially neutral, it constitutes spot zoning as applied. Only one property would be rezoned and removed from the overlay district at a time. Spot zoning is illegal. More importantly, the proposed ordinance allows City Council to overrule the decision of 2/3 of the parcel owners who petitioned the city for the rental overlay district. With only one exception in East Lansing, that of Harvard Cowley, which is a discrete geographical neighborhood. That means that a simple majority of City Council, only 3 members, may overrule in its discretion at least 33 parcel owners who supported the overlay district. There should be a process by which an overlay district may be amended or removed, but that is not the proposal before you. I respectfully suggest that such a plan should require the same procedure that was required to approve the district. In other words, a parcel owner or entity seeking to amend a rental overlay district would need to circulate a petition approved by the city that would describe the changes to the rental overlay district, and it must be signed by 2/3 of the parcel owners in the district. Amendment of the rental overlay ordinance, including some suggestions for a periodic review of rental overlay districts, both made by both Mr. Bartley and Mr. Ramirez Roberts, are worthy of further consideration by City Council, but with the advice and counsel of the city attorney. The proposed ordinance before this commission tonight vests far too much discretion in the City Council to the detriment of neighborhood parcel owners. I respectfully ask that you recommend that the City Council deny its adoption. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Molly Spunner?
Molly Spinner, 815 Stewart. I am also not supportive of Ordinance 1572. It takes a democratic process, makes it undemocratic. I don't know what we're doing here with this. We have so many problems. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, we were in our living room, and it was a nice night, and we live 3 blocks from here in Glencairn. And I had to circle the neighborhood to find the house party that was so loud that we couldn't have our windows open. So the students are encroaching. MSU is getting bigger, and we're getting smaller. So why are we eroding our overlays when this is happening? Do we want our elementary schools empty? Like I don't know what we're thinking here. I understand that we need an outlet. I think we already have one. It's already, if you look online and read about overlays that the city has published, it actually tells people, hey, how do you get out of an overlay? There's an FAQ that actually says 2/3 to get in, 2/3 to get out. So I think it's there. If we want to make it more clear, that's fine. The 5 years thing, no thank you. Like every 5 years, should we review rental licenses or my property taxes? I just don't know where we're going with that. We should be looking at ways to protect long-term resident housing. We're at 38.5% owner-occupied and going down. So I think we need help, not harm. Thank you.
Thank you. Sally Newton?
Good evening. My name is Sally Newton. I live on Sunset Lane in Glencairn neighborhood. And like those of you from Bailey, I'm close enough to students to hear them every weekend. It took a long time for us to get our overlay. Before that, again and again, we saw housing being overtaken by rentals. I wrote you a letter with several other neighbors. Several are here tonight, but many who couldn't attend, but they oppose this proposal. One of my neighbors suggested that this proposal is like tossing a pebble into a pond, potentially causing a catastrophic ripple effect. Many East Lansing neighborhoods that have successfully established overlays in order to preserve their character and integrity would be affected. Our neighborhoods continue to feel pressure from investors eager to buy our properties for their own personal gain. Many do not even reside in the city and have absolutely no vested interest in our community. At a time when our owner-occupied home rates are declining, it is more important than ever that we preserve our established overlays. Thank you.
Thank you. And Beverly Bonning?
Good evening, Commission. I'll keep this short. I know it's a long night for you. You would have received a letter from me possibly Tuesday morning, I think it was, expressing my concerns about 1572, so I'll keep this very, very brief. First, there was a misstatement in my letter, and Mr. Hanks did point that out to me, and in fairness, Jeff, I do want to clarify that my letter stated he intended to sell his home, and to the best of my knowledge, that is not the case. So I want to clarify that. My apologies, Jeff. The only piece of this that's really important for me tonight to express to you is the slippery slope of the proposed 1572. That if properties are exempted or opted out, in my understanding, based upon the Housing Commission meeting I attended, those boundaries are then redrawn. Becomes a new boundary for your overlay district. And upon that redrawing, then additional properties become eligible for an opt-out. So there's a gradual erosion of the boundary of an overlay district. And having participated in the comprehensive plan update team, which I was very privileged to do, and many of you served with me on that team, I really appreciated the piece on housing and attainable housing. And now I'm not going to go to my notes, I'll speak from the heart, that it was quite an education for me about attainable housing and the value of that in our community and the importance of it. What also came out of that, though, was a balance of our various needs in our community to be addressed. And one of those needs is to maintain a healthy stock of affordable home ownership in our neighborhoods, and that we preserve the number of homes that are eligible for purchase. And for me personally, that's because of our school district, that we are very dependent in our East Lansing public school system for families, for that renewal in our neighborhood of families, and keeping our enrollment where it needs to be to have a healthy public school system. So any movement to erode our boundaries or the availability of affordable and attainable home ownership in our neighborhoods is important to me. So I thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you for your comments. That is all the cards I have. Does anybody else wish to come forward?
Jeffrey Hank, 349 Division Street, and I'm here to speak in support of the ordinance. I quite often am referred to as the sole person this applies to, which isn't true. I want to dispel some of the misinformation, misunderstandings, and try to make this factual, practical, and reasonable when we have this discussion. I live at 349 Division. I'm surrounded by rentals. I've lived there for 22 years prior to the overlay coming into effect. I have 2 young children. We're the only family with children on the block. I think there's a family with children on Sycamore Street, but there's no one else around us at all. So a lot of the concerns that my neighbors have, I already deal with. That's one of the reasons that my property is better treated as a rental property. I'm surrounded in every direction, even outside of the overlay on Charles Street behind me. I have a fraternity 2 properties away across Division Street, which plays terrible loud music all the time. I can't keep my windows open. The Hillel Center's floodlights flood into my child's bedroom every night. People breaking into my house, breaking into my garage, breaking into my car, ripping out my bushes, breaking glass, all the things that you all are concerned about, I deal with. A family shouldn't live in my home. If I were to be in the situation I am now, I would not buy that property, which is part of the problem. I'm in a situation where I need to leave the home. I don't want to sell the house because I'd like to live there later in life. I have no interest in selling it. I want to keep it. The result of the cities, and people keep saying I want to sell it, and they don't even know me. And talk about community. Anybody wants to have a coffee with me who opposes this, I'm happy to have coffee and sit down with you. This is the result of about 2.5 years of asking City Council to address a handful of properties, including my neighbors. We've been asking for some sort of relief, and it's taken 2.5 years to get to this point. This wasn't a hastily crafted thing. As Mr. Bartley said, the city needs a best practice procedure to change this. My neighbors that live next to me are moved in have died. Besides, we talk about micro-community and kids. I can't let my kids go run around and play outside. It's not safe. Cars are speeding down the street. We don't have a stop sign in Division, Linden. It's not a family home. It should be a rental. I'd like to provide affordable housing. So the absurd result of the current situation would be if something's not changed, I'm going to leave my house and there's going to be an empty house 2 blocks from campus, or we're talking about building 12 and 13-story buildings a block or 2 from my house. It doesn't make sense. I empathize with the concerns of everyone who is opposed to this because I agree with them. When I talked to different council members over the last couple of councils about this, and I can show you an email sent to Mayor Altman, he was council member Altman in December 2023 from my neighbor asking to sit down and meet. That email was ignored, but we met with almost every other member of council trying to come up with a solution that would protect the overlays, but also provide for some relief. The city is lacking a process right now that's a legal liability for the city. This ordinance before you is narrowly tailored. It solves a handful of people who have problems that have been recognized and a solution has been crafted to try to solve, while also protecting people still in the overlays. Because if there isn't a process, there will be litigation. The overlays could be challenged, and we could end up with a lot bigger concern. Now, I agree with some of the things that the planning staff has said about potential reviews of these, but again, I'm 2.5 years in waiting for some relief. I went to the Housing Commission last week, and I'll tell you, you should look up the 2023 McKenna housing study that the City of East Lansing did. The Housing Commission, I don't even think he's aware of it. Most people don't understand how the overlays work. There is no process. To get 2/3 of signatures, that just repeals the overlay. All right, I will never get 2/3 of Bailey signatories to repeal the overlay in the meantime. That won't work. And we talk about, let's just have the process that you did to get into it. The process to get into it, City Council has the ability to modify the boundary of an overlay. That's the process you could give back to them. This ordinance does that, but with like serious handcuffs on it. So we're not even, when people say these things, they're not actually factual about what the amendment does or what the overlay does. The 2023 McKenna housing study, which I think is flawed but had some interesting findings. There are moderately significant potential impediments to fair housing based on East Lansing zoning and land use restrictions. There are highly significant potential impediments to fair housing based on East
30
Lansing
seconds.
occupancy restrictions, and there are highly significant potential impediments to fair housing based on East Lansing's community opposition to achieving more balanced, affordable, and fair housing patterns. This proposal, at least for the 10 or 15 of us, which I think is about the limit of what this will affect, even when you start taking people out because of the restrictions in there with 2 properties, is about fairness for the handful of us that need it. You have an opportunity to move this forward. I encourage you to do so. That doesn't mean that not more could be done some other time. There's not more thought to put into this. But, government can't move so slow where people take years to get something done. That's a national problem. You have an opportunity to be the antidote to that. I thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you for your background.
Jeff, Can I get you to fill out a card for me,
Yes.
please? Thank you.
Welcome. Would anybody else like to come forward and address the planning commission on this? All right, throwing it over to the queue. Anyone online?
The same person is on the queue, and she has already spoken. Do you want me to give her another opportunity?
I think she already spoke, so I think she had her opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
At this point, we will close the public hearing. Any additional questions, comments, or guidance for staff?
Well, I'll
Mr.
step in.
Chapin?
I think seems to me the consensus is, and it's late tonight too, that we're going to wait for some modifications. We've taken some input tonight, and we'll wait for this to be updated, modified. You know, I have to tell you too, while I make that comment, I am struck by the packet, I don't know, the 455-page packet, whatever it was, with a 296-unit building for rental, and an overlay ordinance that affects just a very, very, very small group of people. I'm struck by the dynamic there, and it's helped me to lean a little bit. I favor strong neighborhoods. I favor opportunities for single-family homes. I can appreciate what Mr. Hanks said there at the very end, but we have to find a balance. And I appreciate, I'm a school guy, of course, you know, the bonding reference to school district and having affordable housing or single home opportunities to support our excellent school district is a factor for me as well. I'm rambling here a little bit, I'll stop, but I think we should pause and wait until we get a better update from Planning Commission and City Council. But I lean towards, I'm not going to pause, I guess. I lean towards strong neighborhoods. I understand that we're building downtown, and we have 296 rental units on the table right now, and that's a community trying to address a series of needs. So,
I don't think that was rambling. I think that was coherent and well thought out. So thank you for the level setting. Commissioner Overby.
I have a
Not so
question
sure
that
about
I'm
that.
wrestling with myself that I would ask my fellow commissioners to wrestle with as we think about this issue. And it's very simple. Why should it be easier to get out than to get in? And we should ask ourselves that question when we think about how to proceed with this.
Well said. Any comments down here? All right. Seeing none, we will see this meeting, or this item at a subsequent planning commission meeting, potentially late May for additional discussion. Okay, that takes us on to new business for tonight, item 8. Up first, 8.1, initial discussion of data centers in East Lansing. Mr. Bartley.
Thank you.
I'm gonna wait.
This is really meant as a brief discussion item tonight. Essentially, we don't have an ordinance before you. I have about 100 pages of different materials for you, but really we wanted to provide sort of the starting point to discuss data centers. We, at the request of staff, the council adopted a moratorium in March for 6 months. We had started to receive some interest in establishing data centers in East Lansing and didn't really have a way to, I guess, address those inquiries because it doesn't explicitly, our zoning ordinance doesn't explicitly include data centers, and there are some land uses I think that could at a sort of be stretched to include some data centers, but it really demands a little closer of a look. So I've had our very capable graduate student intern, Neo Sutar, who's recently completed a lot of good research on this topic and has included that in here. Essentially, we sort of put a little TLDR version of her 30-something page report, but just saying, hey, here are some considerations, as we approach data centers. And when I say data centers, I should say And you'll see in the report, there are sort of the three categories that we're really talking about. You know, these smaller ones, sort of small, medium-size, and large. And large, maybe you've heard it called hyperscale in many cases, where it's potentially several hundred acres. The hyperscale data centers, I think, are the source of most of the concern that we've heard from community members, where there has been some about what is going to be the electricity consumption here, what is the water usage like, what kind of noise do we have to be concerned about, what kind of air pollution, how is this going to increase our own electricity bills, what kind of wastewater impacts can we expect from these big facilities. And so there were enough questions essentially that we said we need to take a deeper dive, have a moratorium for 6 months. And so my intent is to establish a staff work group with at least one planning commissioner. Commissioner Putz has indicated that he's interested in being on that work group, and we'd like to start probably in the next couple of weeks with the idea that we meet bi-weekly and have some sort of recommendation to bring to council. My hope would be for their July 21st meeting that they would introduce and refer ordinance language back to the Planning Commission. So for what it's worth, we did a little bit of analysis about where could these actually be established in East Lansing, and right now there's essentially nowhere. We have two industrial districts, being the M1 manufacturing and OIP being Office Industrial Park, and I think we have 8 parcels in the whole city that have either of those zone districts. So we'd certainly need to consider, if we were to allow these uses, where would they be? If it was an industrial zone district, where would we want to rezone to industrial? There are a lot of questions to be answered. So I guess that's sort of why I want to stick it right now. Is just, this is an introduction. We have some pages for you to review. One thing I'd like to call out that's not really in the working document, sort of larger report that NAIA put together, but later on we have a little discussion about utility burden, and just had noticed that essentially the costs of your utilities and your monthly costs of utilities and how they're sort of related to your income, your annual income, is a question. You know, and we've been seeing essentially what we consider moderate utility burden, like 3 to 6% of your income is going to utilities. We've seen those decrease over the last few years, but we've seen high burden of 6 to 10% of your income going to utilities increase substantially. So essentially that tells us utility costs are generally increasing. We have seen some cost increases resulting from larger data centers in some cases. So we sort of want to keep that in mind too. Anyway, I think that's sort of my brief start. I want to give you this good reading material to read. I'm really going to hope that Ryan reads it. Our new commissioner, Lorna Greening, has also expressed interest in being involved. If not able to be on the work group itself, she said, I want to be interested in, she has a background in energy policy. So anyway, I wanted to answer any questions if you have them right now, if I can answer them, or just any comments, but that's about the extent of what I wanted to cover tonight.
Quick comment on the agenda packet. I thought you guys did a really good job of constructing pages 2 through 5, just really outlining some of the key points and summarizing those really well. So if you guys haven't had a chance to read that, I strongly recommend it.
But the rest was terrible, right?
Yeah, well, the rest was a lot of info. I think this largest agenda packet in total I've seen, but it was really good information. But I think the summary is really good. So.
Thank you.
July is the deadline. You're hoping for a report from that sub-working group to submit a recommendation to City Council, you said?
I think so, yes.
Is there any decision point before us tonight on this? Is there more so just an update on what the process is going to look like and what the expectation is? Okay.
I mean, if you have suggestions on, hey, I think that you should do X, Y, Z in this process, that would be great feedback. But beyond that, just informational for you.
That's good. It was a good packet. I mean, I learned. I actually even read beyond page 5, and I even kept learning after page 5. But you're right. Up to page 5 was excellent. So anyway, no, joking aside, it was very good, very helpful, and something I think we all need to be tuned into. Appreciate the City Council's 6-month moratorium to give us a little breathing room. I noticed in the packet that other municipalities were doing just the same thing, so that's good, all good.
I will
We'll
say,
see. Commissioner Potts?
this really isn't like an ordinance-driven thing, so I'm not sure it's going to be necessarily applicable, but there's a lot of other municipalities or larger, like, groups, not groups, but larger, like, organizations that are requiring data center construction to foot the bill for any, like, infrastructure improvements in order to handle the additional water and electrical consumption. And I think that would be, I mean, it's worth looking at, even at, city council level or whichever other commissions need to be involved in stuff like that, because, like, if they're going to be coming in and, consuming the resources that are right now going to residents and businesses and stuff, that's definitely something that, we need to take into account.
Commissioner Denault?
Yeah. I think to your point, Landon, looking for guidance from us, I think I would be interested in seeing someone from the Commission for the Environment appointed to this group, just because of the significant environmental costs that data centers tend to have. And I don't know if it would be relevant to also have someone from engineering or public works as well.
Yeah, for what it's worth, we are putting together that work group. It's an internal work group, but I expect to have at least one planning commissioner, at least one commission on environment member. We've talked to the DPW staff about it. I think that it's mostly going to be DPW and planning staff. We may have a handful of others, but we're going to try to keep it light, and it'll move fast, break things.
Very good. Thank you, Ryan, for tending to that. Appreciate it.
It's a
And
special
our new
interest of
member
mine.
is interested as well?
She is.
Good, good.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bartley. Appreciate the overview. That takes us on to our last remaining agenda item, 8.2, review of proposed fiscal year 2027 capital improvement programs. Mr. Bartley?
Thank you. So capital improvement program is essentially the city's program to say this is what we're going to install, sort of physical improvements over the next few years. It is required by the state, and typically it's the Planning Commission's responsibility to prepare one after the adoption of a comprehensive plan, unless otherwise exempted. And in the city of East Lansing, you are exempted from that. That role is the city manager's role to create the CIP every year. So really, this is informational as well. I wanted to present it to you, especially since we just adopted our comprehensive plan update last August. It's a good time to look at it, but I also intend to bring it back every year, just so you have an idea of what the city is looking at installing for its own public purposes, essentially. So in the CIP itself, there's a description up front that talks about the various funds, sort of introducing and just laying the stage for it. And then there's several pages of tables that sort of finish out the document. And those tables essentially show the budget for the item on the far left, the budget and when it's proposed to be installed or constructed at the left, and then the sort of thick line right down the middle, and then there's a bunch of items to the right. That's essentially the sources of funding. So you have your when you want to use it and for what, and then on the right is who's going to pay for it. So in what fund, or is it going to be bonded? So that's really it. And then it's just divided sort of among different areas, what would go into City Hall or the library or the fire station or Hannah Community Center, et cetera. That's all listed down as you go through the document. Essentially, if you have, I would request that you look through this document. We don't need to go through it tonight in detail. This is where I'm going to end, essentially. But if you go through and you have specific comments or questions, please get in contact with me directly, and I'll find an answer for you from the finance division, because they're really the ones that can answer those questions. We do expect council to, they've already seen this in draft form. We expect them to approve it at the next meeting on May 26th. So with that, any questions? Did anyone look at it and have any initial feedback or concerns?
Mr. Overby?
Do you have any guidance for us on what comments the city council is interested in looking at it was a list and I actually enjoyed the list, and it was an indication of what the priorities were for the city. But But is there any guidance that you can give to us in providing comments?
No.
Or maybe a city council member could give us that
Or
guidance.
how about the mayor even?
I mean, I would say that in general, if you look at something and have a concern about it and say, whoa, I have some expertise in X field and this seems way too expensive or way too low or something like this, you can bring that up, or if you had a question about why is this in this fund and not something else. But beyond that, we don't have any specific guidance from the council.
Here comes the mayor to step forward.
If I may, just be indulged by the chair briefly. We're looking for what the community thinks their priorities should be in terms of infrastructure. And so we took the opportunity at the last Council of Neighborhood Presidents, last couple of meetings, to discuss the City Council's bonding proposal that the City Manager has proposed. Just to try to solicit feedback for what projects do you think are important. And so that's what we're looking for, because it's a lot of those capital improvements are going to be funded by bonding, which we will all be paying for. And so we're looking for feedback on what people think is important.
Thank you.
Commissioner Denault?
So if we have specific feedback or requests, we should relay them to you, Landon?
Yes.
Or say them right now?
Sure.
Yes and
Either
yes?
one.
Speak
Yes and
now
yes.
or
Speak
whatever.
on the record. One of the things that I noticed as someone who uses this city asset quite frequently at the Northern Tail Dog Park, there's no plans, it appears, to add water service to the dog park, which has been a long time desire for folks who use that, especially in the summer. Dogs are very susceptible to heat stroke, especially when playing with other dogs. That park is mostly in the sun, and so I know that that's been something that folks who use that park often talk about, and there's already water service to the softball complex, and so that would be, I think, a priority for the dog owners. I speak for the dog owners of East Lansing.
Thank you. Ramirez Roberts?
Yeah, I guess I had one comment, one question. One thing for me, I know that city recently, or maybe like 6 months back at this point, had a report on vehicle barricades, and part of that was specifically bollards, but I don't know what to call them, the ones that aren't static but go up and down. I don't know if that is the modular vehicle barriers, or if that is specifically like the huge planters that are, basically vehicle barricades. I don't know, Mayor, do you know? So I guess my comment would be, big fan of bollards, especially when we're looking at what happened to El Fresco this year, and how there's all these conversations about how, we want everything to be more walkable, but then we have businesses that are saying, well, when we do that, we can't get our deliveries, and then also we drop, 2-ton concrete barricades on an employee's foot, those types of things. How can we prevent that? Bollards going forward, where we can allow these types of activities at night to have walkability while still also allowing for at other hours vehicles to get in, deliveries to be made, those sorts of things. And then, so big fan of those. If those aren't in here, they definitely should be considered and added. And then there was one which I just saw here. It was the solar, the DPW solar array and geothermal. Because I saw there's 500. I guess I'd have to go through a lot of funding sources, but I guess, would that be purely solar? I guess I'm having trouble imagining that the geothermal would be that cheap. Do you? Yeah.
I can find out from Cliff Walls, who's
Okay.
project manager there.
I didn't know if we had an answer. I don't necessarily need it or anything. I just want to say that geothermal is very cool, so good to see we're putting money towards that.
I just want to say I never knew that it was the Northern Tail Dog Park. I always assumed it was the Northern Trail Dog Park, but I checked and you were right, so.
Of course I'm right. I represent the dog owners.
Yeah, and the bicyclists. And the landscape.
And the trees.
Yeah. No, it's
And we love
insightful.
her.
So this is a plan of what's to be funded, as a projected. So the expectation is that we outline any potential additions, or I guess even concerns of things that are funding, that we're funding, that maybe we could fund something else, and just send you feedback. Okay?
I would just ask, just because of timing, if you do have specific feedback, and I've gotten these 2 comments and questions tonight, but if you have more, please send those to me by next Wednesday, a week from today, because we need that amount of time to turn it around to get it back to council for their information, and also get you answers from finance or others.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate the overview. Up next is commissioner concerns. Any concerns from commissioners? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Overby.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Chapin. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned at 9:22 PM.
Hey,